situated and organized. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Gore,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bennett, Councilor Randolph,
Here.
Councilor Holloway, Councilor Parton, Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Pelham.
Here. I'm here, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a quorum is present. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors joining us remotely for this budget work session. I believe this is number 5 that we've had so far. Before we get started with going into the presentations, I just want to double check. Our city attorney is leave at this time. I just want to verify that the replacement that she shared will be joining us. Is he on the line tonight? And did anyone coordinate with him to make sure he got the information to be joining us?
So I followed up on that information today, and it seems that he was only scheduled for the regular meeting, which is scheduled for next Tuesday.
Okay. Okay. So we just have to be mindful that we don't have a parliamentarian in on these meetings for today. And if it becomes to be too much, then I'll have to recess or either consider adjournment. So Mr. Altman, are you present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. And I know we're picking up on, so City Council had discussed going through department by department budgets, and we left off on finance and IT for your first wave of departments. The second wave, you have police, sheriff, commissioner, revenue, treasurer, and clerk of court. Is that correct?
Tonight, police is actually scheduled for Thursday night with fire, public works, water renewal, and Davenport.
Okay.
So tonight we would have picking up with finance and IT who were left over from the previous meeting. And then just looking at the order of the information in the books, you would have commissioner, revenue, treasurer, clerk of court, and sheriff.
Okay, and Mr. Altman,
And I'm sorry, Commonwealth attorney.
Attorney, yeah.
so Commonwealth attorney needs to be under clerk of court. All right, and then Mr. Altman, for the documentation you want me to share, you want me to put up the expenditures like I had last time?
So I emailed y'all just the sheets that we needed for the meeting, which was what council requested at the last meeting. So yeah, those work perfect.
What page is?
Do you see that on my screen now, Mr. Altman, or do I need to do another screen share?
It's on there.
Okay, great.
Starting with page 12 in your budget book, if you have it.
Okay, so and that was emailed on the 18th. I think Ms. Brown shared that in the email that was a document that we were referring to. So Mr. Altman, I'll pass it off to you. And then after each department will stop to answer questions, I'll ask council to please raise their hand if they have something to say. And if you raise your hand, I do not immediately call on you. It's okay, I still see it. I'm just getting to you. And then we'll go from there and we'll make sure we do rotations to make sure everyone has had a chance to speak, just to be sure that I do not miss anyone or their hand is malfunctioning or their line is muted. I will call on you to make sure you don't have anything of substance to share to the conversation. And with that, I see Councilor hand is raised. Councilor Pelham.
Yeah, Mr. Altman, is this page 12 been changed from the original page that we received? Has been change?
Not that I'm aware of.
I just want to make sure. That's because I'm using the same report that you gave us from, I guess, whenever April, whatever, March,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, no, ma'am, we haven't changed these numbers
Okay.
at all.
So when we go through the entire process, we're gonna keep this original document until we make such changes, correct?
Yes, ma'am. The only one that you'll have changes on will be water renewal, because the commission voted on its recommended budget, and there were some changes to that some reductions. So we'll have to make those reflective changes in the document, but that's the only one that I know of that will be different.
I mean, if it's different, can you make, sure you get it to insert it in out this original document so I can?
Yeah, we'll send you a supplement. So what I'll do is I'll send you the original, but we'll also send you the changes that were made to wastewater
Well, I think
water renewals
we
budget.
don't have the original. We don't need the original. I don't think again. This
Yeah. Right. Okay. We'll get the changes to you. Make sure you have them.
All right, thank you so much. So getting started with tonight's meeting and the purpose of the department we're talking about today, we're going to start off with the first one that we have on the list, which should be finance. And I have that on the screen, and then I'm going to move over to the work session information. So Mr. Altman, you can go ahead and dive into finance, please.
So we have the finance budget on the screen for you, and that consists of different functional areas. We have the accounting department, purchasing, budget and reporting, real estate assessor's office are the ones, the divisions that make up finance. Overall,
Excuse me, Mr. Altman, one moment. Counselor Randolph has her hand raised. Counselor Randolph.
No, I can wait for him to be done. I just have questions as we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Altman.
so just to kind of piggyback off of where we were at the last meeting, we will be looking into the management consultant, service contracts and consulting services line items, along with any miscellaneous line items for council, trying to put that together. There will be, just from a general perspective, as we discussed last time with Mrs. Griffin's budget, there are some true departmental expenses that have just been classified as miscellaneous over the years. So we won't be able to just in one fell swoop eliminate miscellaneous, because there are some true expenses there and those that those departments need. But we're working on that information for council. So with that, I mean, are there any questions, concerns? I believe Mr. Terry's on the line. If there are any questions regarding the proposed finance department budget.
I'm on the line, sir, and I can take over now.
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Mr. Terry. Thank you for joining us. First hand we have raised is from Counselor Randolph.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Terry. Couple of questions. They don't amount to a lot, but more just questions about that. And the first one is that on CY actuals, which would have been 2020, I believe, you've got an award lunch cost. That's also for CY revenue budget for $100. What do we do with an award budget lunch, award lunch budget?
Okay.
I think for what we've got projected, we've got it zeroed out, but I just wondered what for the last couple of years we've had something in there.
I'll have to come back to you on that.
Okay. And then my,
Because
then my
that may be a
Uh-huh.
HR that I'll have to address that.
okay. And then the
Go
other
ahead, 'cause
question I
wanna
had
come
was
back.
for postage. I know you all do a lot of, it seems like all of our departments do a lot of postage. What mailings does finance do out that they would use $3,500 worth of postage?
We pay our bills, the one category.
And when you say you pay your bills,
Like we get a bill in for a vendor, somebody that done work for us.
yes, sir.
We send out and we use the mailing system that way. W-2s, things of that nature, 1099s.
Okay, so $3,500 a year in postage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All
If
right.
you look
that's all
back,
I have for-
if you look back at some of the previous years, they were a high as 5,900.
Yeah,
And
I just,
so
I mean, I don't know why, if we're electronic, why we wouldn't pay our bills online, but, okay.
not all our bills are paid online, ma'am.
No, I understand that, I'm sure, but I just didn't realize that we would pay, have enough postage throughout the year to pay for $3,500 worth of postage payments. Are you answering questions just for the finance department, and that's what we're doing, Mayor Gore, just finance right now? Or are we going into each of the departments, or are we doing them separately?
Mayor Gore, can I make a comment, please?
Yes, but one moment. Let me just answer her question before I forget. So I would say we're going through each department.
Okay.
Since finance department has multiple tiers, we could do it like we did with code, we just do each section. So right now we can only ask questions about this finance accounting section to make it easier, and then we can drop down and do the next section if everyone's okay. That kind of worked well with code when we did that
Yep,
last
that's
week.
fine. I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Terry.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to take everybody through, there was a series of key bullet items that the city manager wanted to make sure that we covered, the entire staff. And so I want to take you through each of the components of the finance department, make sure I address those, and also point out some other things that I think would be of interest. First of all, starting on page 12 through 14, if you go to page 14 and you look at the very bottom of there, the percentage for the department for the fiscal year 21 budget is showing an increase over 20 at 1.3%. And that's due to the increase primarily of health insurance and VRS, which is consistent with all the other departments. Another way I want to say this to the council and to all that are listening is that we did not increase any costs within our department of all of the 4 units, and we've basically been managing or containing our costs. If you could go back to page 12, to the far right, top left, I'll start there. Starts out that the finance department is composed of 4 units. And I think this is important because oftentimes when I'm speaking with someone or someone's talking to me, they'll say the finance, and then I have to determine what unit they're talking about. So very quickly, there are 4 units. There's the accounting unit, and that consists of 5 full-time salary. There's the purchase unit. Then there's the budget and reporting, and the purchase unit has 1 full-time. And then there's the budget and reporting, 2. And then there's the real estate assessor. So the finance department is composed of 11 full-time positions and 4 units. Now, coming down to the items that were highlighted to us to speak to, accounting and auditing, management consultant, service contracts, and ads. With the management consultant, if we go back to the far right on page 12, where the percentage change, and the first line is the accounting and audit, you see a negative 9.3%. That means that we have decreased the budget, or we anticipate that we will not have to expend as much for the 21 year as we have in the past. And that 9% decrease is compared to the original adopted budget for FY20. Coming over, because there was a question asked regarding what does the $555,000 represent. That represents our line item dealing with PB Mayers, which was our former auditor, Roberts, Farmers and Cox, which is our current auditors, Premier, which is a temp agency that we use, and VML, which handles our pre-audit and our CAFR, and Yasha Business Consultant. One of the things I want to speak about on this line item, as it has gone down, is that within the departments, and for all departments, the city manager has explained this, I believe, before, so I may be redundant. Every director is responsible for their budgets. However, we're allowed to move monies around to address items within our budget, except for we cannot move from the bottom to salaries. So in the case of the 555, that represented items in which, for example, management consultant, you see that I have that budget at $56,668. That was budgeted also in 19 and 20. But as we moved through 19, we actually had to use some of that to account for the accounting and auditing. Now, a question came up to try to identify what's the difference. I'll give it to you this way, and hopefully it'll be clear. There are three cycles that we have to go through: the pre-audit, the pre-audit process, and then there's the audit, and then there's the CAFR. The audit is done by our auditors, and that's Robertson, Farmer, and Cox now, and of course, in the past it was PB Mayers and Cherry Beckert. And the pre-audit function is being handled now by VML, and then the CAFR is also being handled by the city and VML. So that's the component. As we go forward in the future, the goal is to be able to have a unit that can stand alone and bring all of that internal. But that code there was redefined after I got here, and it was used in several different ways. But as we moved forward from 18 to 19, and now we're into 20, that's how it's actually the way we budgeted to account for the auditing and the accounting that goes on there. Now, in the management consultant line, the FY20 is still carrying the vision that we would need to have someone to assist us in developing and improving on our policies and procedures, some training, those types of things. In the past, again, I'd like to just repeat, we have had that line item, but as we've gone through the last couple of years, we've had to move that up because the majority of our focus has been strictly on getting the audits done and the CAFRs out of house. Coming down on the $10,000, that is related to storage, shredding, where we have people come and shred documents. CBiz is a company that does our flexible spending account. And so that's what that is related to, the service contracts. And I believe we were asked to spell out those terms. Going to, and I'm going to save, I failed to mention, I apologize. I'm going to save the last until we get to the end to talk about the telephones, because that question that was raised was a good question, but it has a citywide response as well as a finance department response, and I want to be able to address both of them. Purchasing is the next unit, and again,
Excuse me, Mr. Terry, before we go to purchasing, just to make sure everyone can have a chance to answer their questions timely, I have three hands raised. Let's just do section by section. So you just finished accounting. I have Counselor Denton hand raised, Counselor Pelham, and then Counselor Randolph. So Counselor Denton, you can go ahead. Counselor Denton, did you have something to share? No one's lines are muted. You have
Sorry, I was muted. No, he answered my question in his remarks, so I'm fine. Thank you.
okay. Counselor Pelham, just for the auditing section, accounting section, do you have questions?
Yes. You indicated in the accounting, in the line for accounting audit, you mentioned 4 names. Do you have it broke down how much you paid Premier versus PB Mayors and the other 2? Can you tell us what that was, those totals are?
I can tell you that, but I do not have that broken down
Okay,
at this very moment. I can get you that information, ma'am.
can you name them again for me? Premier,
Yeah, Premier, PV Mayors, Robinson, Farmer, and Cox.
Robinson. That's the new people, right?
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, it was 4
VML,
email. And who is Premier? That just a contractor, just like PB Mayors?
no, they are, think of them like Robert Half or we used to, we had a vacancy. Someone had to leave, and we had to bring them in to do payables, to pay, help get the bills processed. So just think of them as a temp agency.
So that's where you pay for all your extra accountants and all that. So if you pay
Not out of Premier. They were used strictly to handle. We were down a person, and to get the bills out and to make all the payments and do everything we need. We had to have somebody in until we could make other arrangements.
Okay, so tell me again, what's the management consultant? How is that different from what kind of a skill level do they have? The consultant, are they accountants?
Okay, very very good question. It depends. It depends upon what your mission, what your focus is. So when someone uses the term management consultant, I've seen it to mean accountants or your auditors who decide that they can provide you management consulting. They can give you advice. I've also seen it where some accountants or auditors will not do that because it's a compromise or conflict of interest. In this budget and what we've experienced since we've come through, I've defined accounting and auditing as just that. The folks that are delivering directly, doing, as I said before, pre-audit or pre-audit, pre-accounting, getting the books is probably a better way of saying it, and preparing a CAFR. And in the middle is the auditor. Management consultant for the FY20 budget is still based on what I believe was the original intent, that we would have someone come in and be a part of helping us develop our procedures. There was a tremendous, I guess the word I need to use is a tremendous gap of transfer of knowledge, whether it was for turnover, retirement, or whatever. So the reason you would have someone like that is after you go through all your audits, you get all your things laid out on the table, and you say, this is what we're going to do to improve on everything. You start in on that, but you also will want to have someone to help make sure that everything is connected and moving forward, and primarily policies, procedures, integrating your controls and talking, those kind of things. So that's advisory, very important advisory. But again, we've not had an opportunity to do much of that in the last couple of years. So we've had to move that up to cover all of the audit costs and accounting costs. So we're envisioning for the 21 year that we will return back to normal, and we will get ourselves to a point where we can start moving out and doing those kinds of things.
So you're saying that 56,000 for next year will be gone, or you just gonna move it up to the accounting audit section?
If we run into anything difficult and I have to pay for it and it's on the accounting and auditing, yes, I will move that up to take care of that. And I will also make sure that it's clear that, again, that's what we've had to do. We've not been able to get much of that done. All of the folks is getting the books straight and getting the audits out and getting everything in line.
Okay,
But the
thank you.
goal is to make that happen.
And the service contracts included storage, shredding, and you said the third thing, I missed that as well.
Yes, yes, ma'am. The third thing is flexible spending account, a company by the name of CBiz.
What do they do?
They manage that for us. Probably HR is better to give you the HR spin on it. But the way I look at it is employees are able to set aside some dollars, and this company manages that for them. So if they want to go out and purchase glasses or things like that, they have like a set aside account. And Jennifer probably would be a better person to
In your
address
budget,
that.
hers. Why would that be in your budget and not hers if she has employee benefit?
Well, I'll be as honest and as transparent as I can to you, Ms. Pelham. I do not know. This is what I inherited,
Okay,
and this is where it was at. CBiz was the old system tied with the old payroll system, and when we transitioned out of that, there was some work that they still did for us. That dropped off September 2018, 2019, but the last piece that they are still performing for us is the CBiz related to the flexible spending.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pelham. Councillor Randolph, I see you have your hand raised, but I mentioned earlier that I was going to try to make sure everyone had their chance to speak in round. So before I call on you, Vice Mayor Bennett, did you have anything to ask?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Holloway, I know she's on the line yet. If she is, do you have anything to ask? Okay, so I wrote down some questions for my round and then I'll start back up with the second round for everyone. Mr. Terry, just for a point of clarification, when Councillor Pelham asked you about the audit line, I think you had mentioned another business in that. I think you said Latch something business consultant was included in that with Robert Farmer and Cox, VML Premier, and PB Mayors.
Yes, Yasha Business Consultant.
Okay. So she needs to write that down with her list. So my question regarding this, why would PB Mayors still be included in the budget if we, if I remember correctly, staff had asked for council to do an emergency purchase order to switch to Robert and Cox because you wouldn't be able to work with them in the time period that you needed. So if we're no longer working with them on the audits, why are they still including the budget, or unless they are they working on a portion of our audits that requires them to still be in here?
Very good question, ma'am. That column that is there current year is FY20.
Mm-hmm.
PB Mayors was actually engaged for the first quarter and they had cost. So that's what that is. It's not for like it's a full year.
Can you explain a little bit more? You said so you're still using them for something right now?
No, ma'am. Let me make this clear. We are not using them at all. They were discontinued, and we brought on Robinson, Farmer, and Cox. The fiscal year 20 starts in July of 2019 through June 30th. PB Mayors were still performing and doing work and had outstanding costs for that first quarter. So in order to pay them,
Okay,
and
I think
also to bring on Robinson, Farmer, Cox, we had
Okay,
to pay
that
them.
makes
So
sense.
that's their cost in there. So I was asked what was in there. Okay.
No, thank you. I misunderstood
Hello?
what you were talking about. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can.
Sorry.
Commercial. Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am.
I thought that Counselor Pelham had asked you that question for the current year projection. That's why I had asked that. I didn't realize you were talking about last year's budget. So that makes sense. I thought she was asking about the upcoming one with the 344 and you shared that PB Mears was in that number. So they're not in the 344.
No, ma'am. No,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's what I was confused about. Okay. Then the other question I had was, you shared that you're planning to use management consulting, the 56,000 for training and policies and procedures. So my question is, I'm not really sure how to really ask this. If we could have done this fiscal year with having someone come in and help with the policies or training, but I guess it was pushed, the resources were pushed to complete the audit. And you also shared, if I understood you correctly, that may have to happen next year if you run into issues. I guess my question is, what can we do to ensure that regardless of what issues you're running into with the department, that we have a commitment that we're going to focus on the training and the policies regardless, because that's a separate track from completing the audit, unless you're going to have the overlap. Is it the overlap of staffing that ones you need to be trained or the ones that's doing the audits? Like, what would prevent the conversation starting about what policies we can start improving internally with this consultant?
Well, you actually painted a very clear picture. With 11 individuals in the department with specific, I have no bench. So anytime we are doing something, sometime we're multi cross-trained to try to make everything work in the department. So when you do actually have someone come in to do that, they will have to sit down beside that individual, and that individual will have to be dedicated. So the best answer is that we have to prioritize what we know is the best return for the dollar right now, and that is to get caught up in our accounting and our reporting, and to do as much corrective work as we can as we are currently going along, and we are doing a lot of that. But in order to have someone to sit down with someone along the way, you're using the same person that now you're asking that individual not only to do 3 times what they are really, and that's what we're all doing is triple duty, not double duty, but then you're asking 4. So at some point you're going to get a negative return, and you either lose the person or you just don't get a good product. So the goal is just to get everything done and get it out the way.
Thank you. I have 2 last questions that I'm done for this first round. When you talk about that, I understand, but at the same time in the audit, some of the feedback from the auditors was lack of training for staff. And so that's come up in conversations, whether it was you, when you're now that you're the finance director, the previous 2 finance directors that we had that was working through the audits, because now we've had 3 finance directors work through the same set of audits to try to get us caught up. And training has been something that has been repeated. And that's why myself and a few other council members who's been here has been advocating for trying to get someone in to assist with that. So instead of having so many people try to juggle multiple jobs, wouldn't it be also a return on investment to get people trained up the right way and like section it off where you can get one department trained and then move to the next department. So not everyone is pulled off rotation, because if we're having issues with people understanding certain financial things because of lack of training, that also hurts us. And it also delays us completing the audit too. I mean, I think it's a give and take. And I know that I asked Mr. Altman to come up with a plan to try to help get you some staffing to be able to separate off and have some of your team be able to focus on getting the training and working on the policies, so that way you can not have a high burnout rate. But I don't know if it's beneficial to look at how can we really do focus on training. And I don't know if we're going to get that update regarding the staffing that you would probably need to be able to alleviate some of that, because the other concern that I have is some of the modules and munis that we keep talking about, no one is free to implement those. And I mean, it's like so many different things that are in the finance department are starting to build on top of each other because of lack of manpower. And so if there's a way that we can look at this in terms of training and freeing up time to be able to address these other concerns, I think the other dominoes that we need to fix with the CAFRs can be worked on. I don't know if that's clear or in line with what you're thinking as well.
Well, ma'am, are you asking me a question or?
Well, yeah, so the
or you
question
know-
is, when you're talking about the training part, so you said return on the investment, do you not think it's also a good return on the investment to try to get people in place to help alleviate the burden of staff so they can become trained? So that way, while they're working on the audits, moving forward, our future audits will be better because they know better practices and policies.
I think if I was addressing this any other way than the way I'm going to address it, it would be unfair to staff. And because what you're looking at here is, it is normal and it is good business practice to say, let's get people trained so things can happen. But in the space that we occupy in local government, the first thing that has to happen is that you have to get a baseline. And your baseline meaning policies and procedures, or you're going through your practice. So most of the people here, not just only in finance, but throughout the entire organization, are able to go through practice and have a baseline. All of those weaknesses that we are seeing repeated in the audits need to be placed out, and we need to look at them and determine, okay, which one of these now do we need to either have additional staff or staff training, or we need to change the manual process and bring units up to speed. So to put it bluntly, a partial address makes everybody feel good, but that's how we're where we are now. Because if we take a step back and look at some of the things that were trying to be done in 16, 17, and 18, it was a partial effort. We need to look at the entire weakness and all of the recommendation and come down and say, okay, training will solve this, staffing is needed, munis upgrades or munis improvements need to happen, and then get that done. Doing it uniformly and not just doing it and keep wondering how come it doesn't ever really work. Well, it doesn't ever really work because you don't have a management plan to address the objective of how to get it done and a team to lead it alongside the people who are in the field as well as in the position. And that's the goal. That's what we really have to get done. That's why I was asking whether you were asking a question or a comment.
Mm-hmm. You addressed what I was trying to figure out. Thank you. And that's why you're trying to stay with the management consultants waiting a little bit longer from your perspective. Thank you. Councilor Randolph?
I took my hand down because I got answered with some of your questions.
Oh, okay, good. So next round, before you move on to the next section, does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Terry over the accounting section of the budget? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Mr. Terry, you can go on to the next section, sir. I'll scroll the screen up. It's on purchasing.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, purchasing. Okay, purchasing is the next unit. And the question there was about the ads. And that really was progress index was in 19. Purchasing, you know, we have to do something related to putting something out there for vendors or notification, that kind of thing. But that the question was specifically asked about the $902.80. So that was progress index. The other question that was asked was related to the $74,000 that's in the current year column, coming all the way down to the bottom on page 13. And that is the credit card clearing account where the monthly bill is paid from, that account or that line item, if you will. And then the expense is allocated out to all the departments as necessary. So just to clarify for someone else listening that may not be clear, we had to come up with a methodology to make sure that the credit card got paid on time for the city. And so all of that, we pay that bill at that line item. And then the purchasing comes through and allocate to each individual department their portion based on documentation submitted. So it's a zero, what we like to call it a zero budget. It looks high because it's in the current year, but it's supposed to always be zero because we're allocating the cost out to the departments. And that's it for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pelham, you have your hand raised. And you have to unmute yourself. No one's muted on my end.
Okay, so why then in all the departments, I don't see a credit card? How is it captured as a total? What do you abstract that charge from when there's no line in any of the other departmental budgets?
Think about it this way, Mr. Pelham. For travel, if someone uses a credit card, we have to pay the bill. Then we allocate the cost by that department through the reconciliation when they submit their invoices to that line item that they're budgeted for.
So then, so it wouldn't reflect in their budget lines at all.
Yes, ma'am.
Credit card is transferred, the money that's charged is transferred to the master credit card? Is that the way, is that what
No, ma'am.
happened?
No, ma'am. Let me start all over again. I apologize. Department has
Credit
travel.
card. They have
Yeah,
a
credit card, but the line item in which they're traveling on has travel, and there's a cost there. They're budgeted travel for $1,000, and they go out and travel, and they use the credit card. We get billed by the credit card company, and we pay the bill, and then we reconcile the department, reconciles with my purchasing office, do all the documentation, and we've already paid the credit card company, but now what we need to do is take that cost and allocate it back to the line item, back to the department. Does that make sense now?
Don't worry about it. All right, thank you. No, I won't take any more time. It's okay, but I don't understand it, but we're okay. I'll come off line. I understand it. I'm a little slow. I can understand if you charged it and it's transferred to a MasterCard, but I don't understand what you're saying. So, but it's okay. Please move on if no one other question.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions on this section? I'll just call by name to make sure no one's button is stuck. Councilor Randolph?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Bennett.
I'm good, thanks.
Councilor Holloway. All right, and we know that Councilor Parton is still not joining us. All right, and I don't have any questions on this section. So Mr. Terry, we can move on to budget reporting.
Okay. Budget reporting. The key item acts here, again, I'm going to defer to the telephone, talking about that to the end. But the key item acts here was about the furniture and fixture. And that's down at the very bottom. And what that is not furniture like you would think about a chair or something like that or a desk. So we did not use we did not use those funds for furniture or fixtures. It was for equipment that we use in FY20. We had to purchase a printer to handle our W-2s and our 1099 printing. We previously had been using the IT's office, but this year, I think we had pretty much burnt that one out over time, and we had to get some things done. So that's what that is there.
Okay, does that, Mr. Terry, conclude your section for budget reporting?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Okay, I see Counselor Pelham's hand is raised. Counselor Pelham?
So does that mean you buying another printer for next year for the same $1,000?
No, ma'am. What it means is that I cannot anticipate where we may be at with any changes with Munis and the new equipment. There are some items that are new processes that we think we might want to do with Munis. And a few of those we talked to the IT director, and so it may be that we need to purchase those that will help us.
Okay. All right. And the other thing is that your department and 2 other departments, I can't remember right now, has a line item for education tuition assistance. Is that a benefit just for your departments? And maybe Mr. Altman might want to ask this. I don't understand why it's in some departments and not in others. And does the city just, the benefit of city paying tuition for particular positions, or?
Well, I'll let the city manager answer.
Councilor Pelham, it's a benefit that we provide to our employees, but not all employees take advantage of it. So those departments which have an employee that's taking advantage of tuition reimbursement, that's where the line item shows up.
Right. And
So
do we have a policy for that?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Okay, please put that in our boxes, okay?
Mhm.
All right, I'm thinking, I guess you already answered the question about postage, because it seems like all the budget, people put items in the postage throughout the budget. Every department is divided into subsections, and each subsection has a postage attached to it. And that's a question of mine overall, but in finance, purchasing, and budget, how many people do you have in each one of those departments? I want to just break it down out of the 11 and full-time employees.
Okay, apologize again, Mrs. Pelham. I might have been speaking a little fast when I went through each one before, so I'll go back over again. In accounting, it's 5. In purchasing is 1. Budget and reporting is 2. Real estate assessor is 3.
Okay. And with the real estate assessors, the question was,
Counselor Pelham, we didn't get to that section yet. We're right now on budget and reporting.
okay.
It's
I think
okay.
that was all I had. Thank
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for the budget and reporting section? Okay, I will do round robin. Counselor Randolph, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Bennett?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and so I'm the last person. I do have one question. So this is for your budget and reporting team, which is 2 people. Can you explain to me, so before with the former finance director, when we had Mr. Wolf, I think it was Lance Wolf, I had questions regarding when the and about why they were going in the, I don't want to say red, but it looked like their line items were overdrawn. And it was because the year go back. So the team address those in advance, so that way we don't have that situation.
Mayor, I apologize, but you're breaking up like a wavy davy sound.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can adjust. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I was sharing that when we had Mr. Wolf here, and I frequently asked for like unit reports from Munis to be able to see what is the percentage in the current budget to see how money is flowing. And what I noticed was there was a trend of departments running over within their department budget. So it wasn't like they were taking money or transferring money from funds, but let's say one line item would go over. Now, it doesn't mean their whole entire department budget was over, but certain sections were. And I understand that staff can transfer money between their own line items, which is fine. But does this budget team check to make sure that that practice isn't happening? Because it seemed like what we were being told was at the end of the year, they'll shore all those up. And so they would run past their department allocations, and then at the end of the year, all of those overages will be tallied up, and then the finance team would come to council and ask for a budget amendment. Are we moving away from that practice?
Okay, so I don't know how to say this, ma'am, but I know this director hasn't come back to you for anything at the end of the year to show up. And that's because we do exactly what you're talking about. We take a hard look and we make sure, and I have to also give credit to the departments and to their admins. People are very honest here. They don't go out and just buy stuff unless they know they have the budget or it's approved. Now, every now and then, there might be somebody that I may not know about at my level, but no one on my staff has brought to me where Susie Q has gone out and, bought up a whole bunch of things and gone over budget. And so now we're going to have to come back to council to get that dealt with. I have frowned upon always. That's why you have a balanced budget. I don't believe in using fund balance. I don't start building a budget based on a savings account. If we can't generate revenues and if we can't contain costs, we got a problem. So I do not know what Mr. Wolf was really alluding to or what he encountered or what he saw. But for the last 2 years, and I will be quiet and allow the city manager to perhaps share a little bit more, but we've made sure we have pointed out to him that, yes, there are some departments that have a few line items that are hanging out there, but overall, they haven't gone over. But we have not been in any situation I've been approached that I've had to come to him and say, we have to come back to council because we're over. And I know a lot of people were wondering about the CAFRs and all the other costs. That's because I've been managing very diligently all sides of the house, including our internal people. So we do that, and we do that as much as we possibly can. We can do a better job, but we pretty much believe we can contain the costs, and we pretty much know what the cost is for the city.
So thank you. Mr. Altman can talk, but I don't want to make it seem like I was saying that Mr. Wolf was the one that said that. That came from staff, and that's actually been said recently that the overages happened and we show up at the end of the year. I've heard that within months being told to some departments. But I think that we used to get a budget transfer report in our financial report every month. So in our packet, we would get an actual printout from Munis of all the budget transfers between departments. So I think what is happening is, and I just want to ask you about this too. So let's say someone needs to go over, right? It's not because they're wasting money, but they have a cost that comes in and they don't have enough in their budget. Are you guys taking money from other departments to leverage out those differences to make sure that the bottom line is still covered? Because before in our budget resolution, that capability was not permissible. Council had it where I think it was a $50,000 cap total that could be transferred between departments. That rule no longer exists. And so transfers between departments can happen without having to come back to council as long as it's not between funds. So is that how you're able to prevent having to come to council for overages? Is you're taking it from one department to transfer to another if one is in need? Is that how you guys are balancing that out?
So, Madam
And
Mayor,
Yeah,
uh,
let's,
what I would say is, so when we're talking about an individual departmental budget,
Mhm.
the department head may have a cost that comes up that puts that a particular line item. Let's just pick a line item. Mr. Terry indicated previously that they had to buy a printer, and let's say we didn't have money. He didn't have money budgeted last year to buy that printer, but you charge it to the correct line item, and it shows a deficit, $2,000.
Mhm.
As long as Mr. Terry's bottom line budget doesn't go over budget, that means he's got to then show where he's saving money in other places to make the bottom line still work. So we're not taking money from development to shore up finances shortfall. We are requiring our department heads to manage their budget. This is what you have for the year. If you decide that it's more important to buy that printer versus go to a conference, then you can show the printer item going into the red, but know that you have to reserve your conference money to offset that cost. So sometimes we allow you to go in the red because it's true accounting. Let's just say, for instance, postage, and we'll use development for an example. We don't anticipate that we're going to have a lot of public hearings one year, but suddenly we do, and they go into the red and postage. You may want to actually see that they exceeded their budget, as opposed to transferring money in there. Having it go in the red shows that, hey, maybe we need to understand what happened here. So as long as that bottom line budget doesn't go into the red, it's up to the department head to manage those numbers. So we're not utilizing departmental transfers to rescue one another. We're requiring our department heads to manage their budget and stay within their budget each year, absent something catastrophic that occurs.
So when do you do the department transfers? I understand that, and that's what I was trying to share when I first started asking Mr. Terry the question, is I understand that sometimes one line item within the department may run over, but doesn't mean the whole bottom line has run over. But but we don't see the transfer report anymore. And so when I was looking through the actual report that you got, the Excel sheet that you got me from when that had asked for about this current year's percent totals, I saw transfers. And I know in our last couple of meetings, we kind of asked about some of those. I know you're working on them, but it made me question about the fact that we no longer have that requirement that it has to come before council. When are you transferring, in what type of situations are you transferring money between departments? Because I can see in the report that that's happening, but may not be often or frequent. But in what instance would you do that?
Well, the transfers that you're seeing, which you get in your monthly report from finance, are transfers that are coming out of contingency to cover unexpected costs during the year, such as the addition of the legal assistant in the city attorney's office, or the purchase of a piece of property that we didn't budget for, but we take it out of contingency. To my knowledge, we're not transferring money between departments. We're again making the department head utilize their funds. And as long as they finish on the good side, you won't see a transfer at the end of the year, because there's nothing to true up, because they still have money in their budget. They didn't run overall into the red. So, you know,
but you know what I'm talking about when I say that, because that's been the practice, is wait until the end. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Right. Yeah. The quote unquote true up that occurs when the CAFR is done. Yeah. We're making everybody manage their money during the year. And you have to, if you need to make a purchase, then you have to sacrifice somewhere else in your budget, unless it is something that's significant and potentially has organizational implications. You know, a good one would be IT. We had to make some purchases for phones. Now that was an organizational benefit when we upgraded to the VoIP phone system. So we took money to purchase the phones overall instead of each department doing that. But if it was an individual thing, I decide that this year I'm not happy with 2 monitors, but I want 3. Well, now I've got to bear that cost for that 3rd monitor out of my budget and not spend something somewhere else to make up for it. And that's what we're doing. We're not trying to have everything fall to the bottom line at the end of the year and true it up. We're making each individual person, each individual department manage their money and save money, so there isn't a negative in a department at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Welcome.
One last round. Does anyone else have anything to share regarding budget and reporting? Okay, we'll move on to, I guess that's real estate assessor. Is that what RE is, Mr. Terry?
Yes, ma'am. Real estate assessor.
Okay.
Okay. Here, starting on page 14, I guess start there. The management consulting and service contracts coming on down, and temp vendors. Okay. Under management consultant, that is Gerald Hall and pictometry, and service contracts is Manatron and Q Public. For the question raised regarding the temp, we need to use a temp real estate technician position was put along with all the other new positions that were requested that we were not able to fill this time, but the office still needs to have that function. So we didn't get a position this year, so we'll still need to use a temp to handle services in that office. And then the other item is mailing. The question was raised regarding postage. For FY21, I believe that's a reassessment year, so they'll need that postage for that year.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Does that conclude this section?
Yes, ma'am. The only thing that's left is to address the question that was raised regarding the telephone. Mm-hmm. And I saved that to last because I wasn't sure. You could read it a couple of ways. And so what I wanted to do was to try to address it both ways so that other departments, when they are asked the question, perhaps what I've done will help. Treating it from a citywide, it was asked, why does each department have a separate budget cost of phone and fax? Mm-hmm. Citywide, just best practice, you want to try to capture or show what the true cost of a department is. And most of the time you really, it takes a lot to try to really get to the true cost, but that's what you want to do. So you want to be able to know what is the true cost, and part of various departments citywide is related to their telephones and fax, etc. If the question was specific for the finance department, that to me comes down to that I have 4 units. Again, we just went through those 4 units, and each one of those units actually, have a telephone and that kind of thing. What we did do, and what I just wanted to also to try to make kind of clear to everybody, one of the items is that we do get the phone bills, and we pay the phone bills up front. However, we're behind, or we've been delayed in getting the cost allocated out to the departments. We are, from July through September, we've done that. And so now we are working to catch up for the rest of the year. So that is similar to the same way we use the zero balance or zero budgeting for the credit cards. We go ahead on and take care of the bill, and then we allocate the cost out to the departments. And I think that's it. Those were the kind of questions that I had seen in the email chain.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Terry. We have questions for Councilor Pelham and then Councilor Randolph, and I guess it's on the real estate assessor and then what you shared about the phones.
I think naming the consultants and contractors, or what do they do for us, for that department? What do they do? I mean,
if you hold a second, Mrs. Pelham, hold on a second.
So while Mr. Terry's looking at pictometry, it builds off of our GIS system, and allows for very detailed map viewing in 3D. It's an item that the real estate assessor's office has been pushing for a while. So they entered into that arrangement this fiscal year. So we should see that starting to pay some dividends with an increase and enhanced abilities for them to do some assessment work and utilization by GIS and the citizens.
That'll be a continual cost every year.
There'll be a maintenance cost each year, but not a total cost up front like we had before. But there'll be a maintenance cost, yes, ma'am.
But it's projected to be 50 grand next year as well.
Well, I'm not sure if that's all of what that, I can't remember if Mr. Terry said that that line item was just pictometry or additional.
Or he did say something else. Gerald Hall, is that the same company, Gerald Hall and Pictometry, or is that two different companies?
Two different companies, but I'll let Mr.
You can actually
Terry speak to that.
Okay. And a temporary vendor and a service contractor, what did they do for? Well, he talked about the temporary vendor, but the service contract.
That's Megatron and Q Public. And I'll have to get back to you specifically in terms of their functional requirements.
So that's the main thing I would like, Mr. Altman, is that not so much as the name of it, because I wouldn't know them anyway, but if they give us what the purpose of the contract is for.
The Q Public is our online real estate database that you can go, any citizen, anybody can access, so they can go on and type in 300 North Main Street as if you were looking up the real estate card. The way in the old days, you would go into the real estate office, you would give them the address, and you get a real estate card. It would be on paper. Now all that information is electronic, and that's what Q Public is. So you can go on our webpage and look up information about any property in the city. Gives you property owner data, zoning data, real estate assessment information. All the stuff that's public record is available there, including ownership trails, so previous owners. So that's what Q Public is. I'm trying to remember the Megatron piece. I should know, but that slips my memory a little bit, but we'll get that information for you.
Megatron and Gerald Hall. All right, you can get back with us on that. And then I also noticed overall on some departments and not on others. Well, like real estate, they have a cost for uniforms, which is $400. Is that for shirts that y'all ordered that says real estate and stuff like that, the uniforms throughout the budget, or is that a requirement?
Well, I would say that the funding there, when we go out and do assessments, we want to make sure that our employees are readily identifiable as city employees. So that may be a shirt, a jacket, something that is representative of the city, so that those folks know who we are and we're just not strangers walking up to their front door in their yard. So we want to make sure that those folks are identifiable when they're out in the community.
Okay. Oh Lord, whatever. I lost. Oh, here it is. That's all I have, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Pelham. Councilor Randolph.
Mine's real quick. It's about the phones. Mr. Altman, you and I talked previously so I could understand phones a little better and how we were implementing that. Mr. Terry just brought up the phones that he puts out, the phone costs for each of his 4 areas under finance, the different departments. What is that amount? He said he gets the bills and then assigns it. I thought that there was a cost that was associated with the VoIP type that IT was putting out. Help me understand that a little bit better than what I apparently do on the phones for the whole building.
Well, we have moved to a voice over IP system, which has reduced our overall phone costs significantly. And I think gleaning from what Mr. Terry is saying, we still do a cost allocation to departments for some of that service. Overall, it doesn't sound like we're at a point where we've nested it all in one area at this point. And I'll let Mr. Terry clarify that for sure.
Because I thought that was the whole point for this coming year, was to get everybody done, and all the phones would go under IT. So I'm not clear on that.
That is open.
Can I interject here?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're absolutely correct, Counselor Randolph. What we still have 2 phone systems, and I was going to go over this during my presentation, but we still have 2 phone systems. We have an analog and voice over IP. There are still 2 departments that are out that require phone bills. They're on the analog line. And so there are bills that are still being generated from them because they are not disconnected yet. So we are running a voice over IP and an analog system. And it is our hopes when going through the department, going through my budget, I can identify and show you where that costs for moving the other departments onto the system so we can eliminate the analog altogether.
Okay, so he's referring to analog phones that he's still using, apparently, and in his different departments. That's going to account for the everybody in the city, not just that's going to be the constitutional officers and everybody at some point in time, correct, Dr. Manker?
Yes, ma'am. And we will still maintain some analog lines. We won't be able to get rid of the analog line that's to the elevators throughout the city.
Yeah, gotcha.
We will not be able to get rid of the analog line that's going to the dispatcher unit in the police station, at the fire station. So there will be some analog lines here for protection, and to ensure that, calls can continue to come in the event that the wireless, go out, or there's a line that got clipped in an accident or something. So we have to plan that way. There will be some costs that still linger around, but hopefully is reduced.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I ask my questions, we'll do another round to make sure that no one else was missed. Counselor Holloway. Counselor Vice Mayor Bennett, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And let me just see if Counselor Denton happened to get back on the line. I see her name. Are you there, Counselor Denton? If you are there, I have names line. You have to unmute yourself. Huh? I couldn't hear you. Was that you?
Yeah,
Oh, your name disappeared earlier, so I thought that you were still off. So do you have any questions regarding this section?
no, I'm actually on video and mic, so I don't know why.
Your video is okay. Now I see your video now. It just came up. Okay. All right. So I'll ask my questions now. For this, Mr. Terry, in regards to the temp position, is that what you have estimated at $20,000 for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what would that at work look like for a temp for $20,000 for the whole fiscal year to help with the assessor's office?
In a nutshell, soon it probably will not be a full-time effort, but it gives the other assessors an opportunity to be out of the office. Somebody has to be in the office to handle traffic and calls and things that come in the office. But we also need the other staff to be in the field doing assessments. So we don't have a dedicated person there to man the office and then to do all of the other documentation and things that come when folks come back in from in the field. So that's what that's representing.
So when you did, I thought there was one person in the real estate assessor's office. Is there more than one? I thought when you reported out, you said you counted technically one person for that space. Is there, did I have that
No,
wrong?
ma'am. Well, I guess I have to say, yes, ma'am, you have it wrong. There are 3 people in the real estate assessor's office, the real estate assessor and 2 real estate specialists.
Okay, so it's 3 people.
Yes, ma'am.
So this person will help the 2 real estate specialists to be able to get stuff done. And
Well,
the-
actually, the assessor, all of them are field-driven folks. So the way it works now, in order to keep the office open to the public, only 2 at a time can, be out in the field or doing what they need to do. So having a temp there, in the past we've had a temp, but in the past, of course, that's not a full-time effort. But we think we really need to have this, particular come up this year to get this done.
Can we get a little bit more information regarding this temp position? You said if it's $20,000, I don't know what the rate of pay would be or for how many hours a week, but it just seems very low in terms of like let's say we have somebody that's $15 an hour. I'm just making up something. I don't know what that number is. Even with $15 an hour, I can't imagine there being enough hours to truly make an impact at $20,000. That's so if there can be a little bit more information regarding what they're looking to hire someone at the rate, and then how many hours a week or for how many months, or what that would look like for $20,000. And you mentioned about having a position for that. Is that included? Let me switch to the position summary. I don't remember seeing that in our notes for one of the position requests. I have that on the screen. This is what we were given about the summary of positions.
No, it's not there. It's a temporary position, which the manager has the authority to create part-time and temporary positions.
No, that's not what I'm asking. He made a comment when he was speaking. He said that the full-time position wasn't filled, and that's why they're going with the temporary one, if I understood him correctly.
Right.
And that's why I'm just checking to see the full-time position request isn't on the position summary request.
That was to the city manager. That was in your first presentation, I believe, where you showed all of the positions that were being requested by everybody in the city.
I have that
The-
image on the screen. I don't see that on here. That's why I'm asking,
So-
unless I'm missing, unless it's not the right document.
So what you have on the screen is the approved and authorized positions that we have currently, not all of the requests that were made by departments, which in this budget, we did not make any recommendations to add staff given where we are with COVID-19. The question that you've asked about the position, so they're looking in the past, and I'm going way back, you had 2 field assessors and an admin in real estate. What we have now is 3 field assessors and no admin. So what they're looking for is someone to be able to come in during the period of time in which they're out in the field doing the assessment, which isn't the entire year, but just during that period of time to be able to man phones, answer questions, and keep, some things going while the staff is out in the field doing their field work. And with that, I think you're getting about at $20,000, probably roughly 25 hours a week at the number of $15 that you threw out there. That's about what you would get. But it's really to have someone that can answer the phones and take messages while they're out in the field doing their assessment work. Because at this point, we, as everyone remembers, used a contractor the last time we did the real estate reassessment. And it looks at, and that was establishing a baseline. And if I'm reading this correctly, and Mr. Terry can correct me, it looks like we're going to be doing the reassessment work in-house.
Yes, sir. That's the game plan.
So if that's going to be done, that leads me to my next question. If that's going to be done in-house, So these other contracting fees that Councilor Palmer was talking about, that's GIS and that's just the software. We're not looking to have another contractor come in and help them this upcoming year initially.
That's correct. And Mrs. Pelham had asked about what Manatron was, and now I remember. Manatron is the company, the name of the company that provides ProVal, which is our real estate reassessment software package.
Okay. My last question is in regards to the technology for the real estate assessor's office. I know year before last, they had a card that council approved in their budget. For whatever reason internally, that was shifted around, but management found them, I think the card from your office to fill in the gap. And I think they share with development now. I might have that incorrect, but I know that we approved the car didn't happen, but some shifting occurred to make sure they had a vehicle. Is there a need to try to replace that to keep that gap closed? And the other part that would be in terms of supplies, especially since they're gonna be doing this in-house, do they have the technology to expedite doing this instead of having to go do everything on paper like they were doing before and start using some software, which would increase their ability to do assessments in the field?
I would say that I've pushed and suggested that they move forward with software, getting tablets to take out in the field to assist. That we're not there yet with the ability to do that. So I would anticipate that they will be doing paper rounds this assessment, and then we'll be moving forward to trying to implement utilizing more of a tablet that uploaded the data from each reassessment as we move forward in the future. I think that's something that Ms. Griffin and her department have done a very good job of showing the utilization of that type of equipment out in the field. And it's something that we need to work towards for all of our departments that have some field level activity that then you have to come in and key information back in. It reduces workload and work time. So at this point, I don't believe that they're there with that and real estate, but that is what we're working towards having for that department.
Can you just share a little bit why, in your opinion, why they're not there yet? If we do assessments every
2 years.
2 years, and we talked about this last assessment. So what are the hiccups in trying to move this electronically?
I think from what I understand in my conversations with Mr. Terry and with the real estate assessor, she wanted to get her baseline data completed first before moving on to utilizing tablets and the technology. So that's where the delay comes in. She's been working on getting all of that, all of the sketches, all of those individual pieces of information about the property completed prior to implementing her technology that she wants to do.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Randolph?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other last questions for Mr. Terry regarding the phones and the real estate assessor's office? Is there any other general questions for the finance department at this time? I do have questions regarding budget, but I don't want to hold this up. So we have other departments to talk to. So I would just ask Mr. Altman if we have time at the end that I can come back and ask these questions for finance if we get through the other departments. And if not, then I'll talk to you offline about how we can have that conversation regarding the revenue projections.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just hold tight, please, Mr. Terry. We'll move on to the next section of the presentation, and I'm trying to pull up our meeting. So the agenda packet has information technology up next, and I will go back to the budget document the city manager provided. Actually, what's next in our packet is the commissioner revenue. You want me just to scroll past her and go to IT, Mr. Altman?
Yes, since IT was at the last meeting, I thought we did those two first and then drop back to the ones we had on schedule for tonight.
All right, perfect. IT's on the screen. You have the floor, Mr. Altman.
Well, so as you know, we've placed a significant amount of emphasis on improving our IT infrastructure over the past couple of years.
And sorry, Mr. Altman, excuse me, forgive me. I just want to make sure I'm tracking notes before we go to IT. The ask I have from finance that we have to follow up on is allocation of the audit line item in the accounting portion of the budget. They want Councilor Plum asked to know how much each consultant or group got paid for. Then what was the $100 from the awards luncheon? I think Councilor Randolph had asked for that. And the other question I had, you've already answered regarding Megatron consultant. Are you tracking any other questions from anyone regarding the finance budget?
Well, we have to determine what Gerald Hall is for real estate. That one.
Gerald Hall, okay. All right. And council, if I miss one of your questions, please message me in the chat and I'll add it to the list. I'm just trying to make sure I track everything. Sorry,
Councilor Pelham also asked for us to send the tuition assistance policy.
okay, that's true. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So we have, since Dr. Manker arrived a little bit ahead of me, we have certainly been making efforts over the past couple of years to improve our IT infrastructure. And I guess I would think that we're moving in that direction. We have a little ways to go, but since Dr. Manker's been here, we've made significant improvements to our infrastructure, our reliability and backup capabilities with disaster relief, moving to voice over IP to reduce our overall phone cost. So we've made several strides over the past few years. We've got a way to go, but I think we've done a really good job of given where we were when she arrived and when I arrived in early 18. I will let her go through her budget with y'all. As with most budgets have the primary cost as people. Her budget, we've got people, but we've got a ton of service contracts regarding and revolving around our Munis software. So with that, I'll let Dr. Manker walk y'all through her budget request.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Madam Mayor, and members of council. Before we get started with the discussion today, I just wanted to, really quickly walk through IT and what the services are. So as we are going through each line item and you have questions, then maybe some of that information will give you a better insight. So the city, as you know, IT is the operational support department. The city has 3 data centers, one at water.
What?
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
There was a blank in the middle of you talking.
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
I can.
You cannot? Okay.
I
Yes.
can.
I can hear you, Dr. Manker. You're fine.
All right. The city has 3 data centers, one at City Hall, one at the police department, and one at the water department. All the information, the data that comes back to City Hall, the water department or the water renewal facility operates as an emergency management failover data center. And the IT department supports 85 tickets a week. 40% of those tickets come from police department, 30% are fire, and 20% comes from the rest of the remaining of the city. So with those statistics, you can see that when you support IT, you're supporting emergency management mostly. As we get started and we want to go through the budget, I just want you to keep in mind that IT isn't just computers, laptops, and keyboards. It's maintaining a network infrastructure. So it's not tangible. It's not anything citizens can see like paved roads. But when citizens come to the Treasury Department, there's a level of expectation that the system that they're entering their data into is safe and secure. So that requires some investment in IT. So the IT department has a management consultant budget. It's $4,000. And I have a list of questions that were emailed to me today, and I'll try to go through those. And you guys can stop me whenever you have any questions. But the management consulting line item is for advisory, consulting, level 3 technician support, and extended technical support. So IT department consists of 7 employees. One is, which is a web developer. He's not really technical in nature. So they really leave 6 individuals to do all the troubleshooting. Sometimes we don't have all the answers, and so we have to reach out to consulting firms to help us with network design, or if we have questions, or if we don't know why something is happening. And those service contracts really come from a company, mostly from SciComm and Mitel. Mitel is the phone company, and SciComm is who we use as our level 3 technical support. So when it's something that's out of the range of our knowledge, we reach out to those guys to help us understand or receive advice or help us with the information. Questions there?
Can you go over, so
Hello?
for the IT budget, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that was your overview for the whole IT section of the budget? Or you want to get questions for what you
No,
just
that
covered?
was for managed consulting.
Okay, you're on it. Okay, is there any questions regarding the management consultant line item in the IT's budget? And that amount is the 4,000, I believe I'm looking at this correctly.
No.
Okay, no one said anything,
30,
so
is
go
that
ahead,
for the-
Dr. Maker, and go through your overview.
Okay.
I have a question.
On my
So the
screen, I have
next
what
line
I,
item,
go ahead, Dr. Maker. I think
30,000.
Council Pelham had one question real quick, I'm sorry. That should be the management consultant that I have on the screen. It should be $4,000. Is that correct, Dr. Maker? Or am
yes,
I
that's
looking at the
what's
wrong
listed.
line?
You're correct.
So that's the 4,000
but-
line item. Okay. Sir Council Pelham, do you have any questions regarding the management consultant 4,000 line item?
That's for Mitel and CCOM. That's the thing. That doesn't include the service contract for 300 and some thousand. Or you
No,
may-
she
you gonna
just
talk about
shared
that
that we're
differently?
talking about the.
Say
Yeah, so
again?
we're going through each section, and she just shared the overview for the management consultant, and I just try to make sure everyone's on the same page. That amount is the $4,000, and she will go over the other sections, but right now we're just on management consulting, and that's the 4,000. So is there any questions regarding that particular line item?
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Maker, you can go to the next line unless, I don't know, Councilman, is your line going in and out, or are you trying to ask a question?
No, I just didn't know was she talking about service contracts too?
No, it was just
But that
management
was just for
consulting. She's about to
management.
go there next.
Thank
Yes, ma'am, just for management consultant. Okay, perfect. Okay, Dr. Maker, can you just state which line you're on, and then you can do your overview so we'll be on the same page. I'll put the cursor over the line you're talking about.
Okay, next is service contracts. And so in service contracts, we have several contracts that increase yearly. A lot of them, the biggest contracts are Tyler. They take up 1/3 of their entire budget. So Munis Tyler is $75,000 a year, and court management system is $7,300 a year. Okay, the next largest amount in my service contracts is internet service. Internet service is $45,000 a year. And so those amounts take up the majority of the service contracts. There are a lot of other services that are listed in the service contract. But we have things that need to be renewed, like our SAN servers, our firewalls, our FOIA messenger archive, our document management system, the internet pipe that goes to water renewal for the police phones for failover in case there's an emergency, the wireless access points, cybersecurity training modules, our intranet, our cloud, and then there was $12,000 new dollars that were moved to the IT department for Municode, Just FOIA, and POCO. So those will enter into the service contract line item. But that's essentially our service contract, and I can provide you guys with a detailed explanation what each item is, but for the most part, that's what my service contract consists of. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Maker. Councilor Pelham, do you have a question regarding service contracts? I see your hand is raised.
Oh, ma'am.
All right, does anyone else have questions? Councilor Denton? Councilor Randolph? Vice Mayor Bennett? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Menker, I have a question regarding this. So with this $333,000 for the service contracts, when we council solidifies, if we want all of the city services that are universal to be paid for out of your budget, that money will go here? Or does it already include the ones that we talked about adding to this? Does it include all the other ones?
They include now Office. No one is responsible for buying any Office software. We have consolidated that, and that has now been added to this line item. Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
All right, you can go to the next section. And Councilor Palmer, if you don't have any questions, can you lower your hand so I can make sure that to check if it's a fresh question or not, please?
I just put it back up.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
was down.
Yes, okay, go ahead, go ahead.
You have the same, okay, you almost have the same amount dedicated for next year. If you added all those other softwares, it only gonna cost $80,000 for next year.
I'm sorry.
Because your budget for your service contracts, the only thing that went up was $80,000 or $80 really. Oh no, it went from
No.
313,000. What are you talking about?
Right,
What
because
you've captured.
Tyler, right, because Tyler has a yearly increase somewhere between 3 and 5%. We never know what that yearly increase is until the bill comes in January of every year. So I estimated based on that, I think that I asked for an increase to cover that projection.
That's what you're bringing from the other departments, correct? Is that the same line item? The service contracts that
No,
you would be managing from? What are you bringing from the, say that part again?
So Tyler has always been in the IT department. We pay for the Munis Tyler system, and it's projected to cost increase 3 to 5% every year. That's just been the trend. Some years is 3%, other years is 5%. So I always ask for that 5% just to cover that projection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maker. You can go to the next portion of your budget.
So the next line item in my budget that everyone had questions over was the telephone, fax, and video. So we spoke about this already, where we currently have two phone systems in place. One is Mitel and one is Avaya. Avaya has reached its end of life. And we really are at a situation where we have to move people or we have to upgrade. So when I say move people, we have to move into a new system or we have to upgrade the current system. And so until we do, we have this added expense of operating with two phone systems across the organization. And so my telephone and fax and video budget reflects those costs. It also reflects the website, the costs for maintaining the website and having the hosting company. It reflects the security protocols that we have to have on the website. It supports the Mitel phone maintenance because the police station is mostly on a voice over IP. There is a maintenance, and now that we've included several other departments, the maintenance fee has went up over the past 2 years. And then eventually the maintenance fee will taper out once the remaining of the departments come online. So right now it's actually pretty low. We have fax to email, and just lately Zoom was added to this line item. So the telephone, fax, and video consists of all those vendors and what we use those vendors for. Any questions?
I don't see any hands raised. Does anyone have anything else for the telephone section of the budget? Okay, Dr. Maker, you can move on to the next section.
Okay, so the next line that was in question is the training department. I think there was a question of whether training was only for my department or whether it was for the entire city. The budget line item is for 18.5. IT originally and historically has been given $5,000 to pursue training for their employees. However, last year council approved Munis related item trainings. And because there was no separate line item, they both have been combined into this training line item in the IT department. So I use at least 13 or 14,000 for Munis training, and I try to reserve the additional 5,000 for employee training.
Is that Munis training for everybody? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead, Councilor Randolph.
Is that Munis training for all departments, not just yours, correct?
Right, yes.
Thank you.
So the training program that we enter into provides us with a number of days for the entire year. There's different packages that we can sign up for. And typically I just send out an email to every department that says, hey, Munis training is available. What would you like to be trained on? And then I coordinate that training with a Munis provider. Pre-COVID-19, now this doesn't really capture all the training costs because I pay for the actual training itself. Pre-COVID-19, if the department requested a trainer to be on, to come down in person, then they had to absorb the cost of the travelers' expenses in the days. So if they stayed 2 days, they spent 2 days in a hotel. and the airfare, and whether or not they needed car rental. So for me, I just covered the cost of training. But now since COVID-19, they providing training online for the most part.
Let me ask you
Thank
this,
you.
Dr. Manker. With the training, is there a requirement that everybody that comes on board get a Munis training within a certain time frame? Because I imagine as you're talking about this training, you're talking that we pay for it no matter how many people are actually being trained. Do you have a Munis training schedule that everybody has to get trained once every couple of years to update their Munis training, or once they're trained, they're trained? And I know there's specific training, like finance would need to do specific financial training for Munis. You're just training them on the general, how to get into and out of Munis, I assume. And do you have any type of schedule that we put the employees through, or how long after employment do they have to get training, anything like that?
So those are all great questions. We so department training is just specific to their department, like the example you gave. Finance have certain trainings. They have to schedule that training with me, and they have to outline what it is they want to have training on. As for general training, new employee training, whether or not how to get around in Munis, what Munis is, what it looks like, that training is held twice a year. I try to have, that's called general AP training. So I scheduled that for anyone who is new to the city of Hopewell, or who needs a refresher on how to perform a task that they may not perform regularly. So the next AP training is June the 4th. And so there is a schedule. First, I try to reach out to the departments at the beginning of the year around September, and develop a schedule based on when it's best for them to have training, because every department has these deadlines for the different services that they provide. And so what's best for the treasurer department is not the best time for training for real estate. But once I receive all those dates, I develop a schedule, and then I try to incorporate general training that everyone needs. And that way I try to ensure that we use up all the days that we have pre-purchased.
Okay, is there, so the training, the general training is something that you provide in-house without an outside consultant? Or is that also, is that something that could be filmed or done online, so that when people come on, they don't have to, if they come on, they don't have to wait 5 months to get general training? They can do this exercise of going online and looking at how to access Munis and what you need to do for the general stuff?
You're right. And actually finance, Felicia in finance, one of Mr. Terry's employees, she fills in the gap. So if someone comes on board in between the time that the general training is scheduled, she will hold little training sessions on how to. And then when the formal training come back around, then those people, 9 times out of 10, they enroll into the formal training again.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So finance covers the gaps.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Renouf, are you complete right now for this first round?
Good. Thank you.
Okay, and the Council Palmer, you already spoke once on this first round. Let me just go around to make sure no one else has questions. Counselor Denton, do you have any questions for right now?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Vice Mayor Bennett?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right, so for the first round, I do have a question regarding the training, and I have a few others, but I'll wait for you to complete your whole presentation. But regarding training, it seems like you're just a pass-through for the training. It's really up to the department directors to tell you what type of training they want for their departments to be efficient, correct?
Well, yes, and that will be for whoever, conducts the training. There's no one person who would know what every department needs and or how to operate in every department. And sometimes like for instance, the development department needed some training on some aspect of their module that they wanted to use. And so I wouldn't know that unless the development outlined what the needs were.
Okay,
So
so
I
when
can't
you
just
use this,
hold a
Go ahead.
training for development department is what I'm trying to say. I can't just have a training for development. They have to tell me what their needs are.
so with the 18,000, you save a portion of it to make sure you ensure that there's some general training available. But the directors, it's incumbent upon them to make sure that they take this available funding to train their departments. So seems like it's on a first come, first serve basis, correct? In terms
It
of
sounds like yes and no. I reach out to every department to see what they need training on. And if they do not respond, then it becomes on a first come, first serve basis. But I make an effort to assign training to every department.
Okay, so let's say you put out your ask early September. Those who want to do training, sign up, you coordinate that, you make sure you have a little pot of money available for general training, and then the rest of that pot of money is available for first come, first serve basis. So how do you try to make sure that people are not doing repeat training? So let's say if there's turnover in a department and they need to retrain everyone, how do you ensuring that no one's just soaking up all the money because they keep retraining, as opposed to creating internal policies to make sure that once there is turnover, they're cross-training each other, and not just using this pot of money to keep having someone come in and train the staff again?
Well, we've only had this training money is available for 2 years. And so there's no real policy on and there's no real direction on how we use, the training. Right now, as it stands, the training is available for anyone, no matter how many times they need the training. And if no one else signs up for the training, we have to use the days within the time frame that is allowed it to us. So it's best that, whoever wants to be trained, no matter how many times that is available to them. It's a use it or lose it training services.
Thank you, Councilor Pelham.
No. I have my hand up.
Yeah, yes, you do.
I forgot what I was gonna ask.
Okay, well, Dr. Mank, you can go on with the rest of your budget.
Okay, so I think there's 2 more questions left that was asked of me. And so the next line item would be disaster recovery. I think the question is, it was recently budgeted at one amount and now it's increased to the total $60,000. So the disaster recovery was initially in the capital account. My budget last year increased a lot of different line items, and that's because a lot of capital accounts were moved into operational. Those accounts were there historically for years, and since Mr. Terry has been here, he has decided that those accounts should be placed in the operational budget. So Disaster recovery was one of those items. It moved down from capital into the operational budget side. When the account was established, or when disaster recovery was established in the city, it was established in mid-year. So it was established in June. I mean, in July. I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up. It was established in January. So we only had 6 months worth of payments, which was half the cost, which was $30,000. Now that we're at the next budget, we have to budget for the entire year. So that's why you see the drastic increase of 30,000. We only budget for what we needed at the time that it was implemented. So, any questions on that item?
Thank you. Counselor Pelham, you have your hand raised. Okay, Counselor Randolph, do you have anything to ask regarding disaster recovery?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I was talking to
Go
myself, I
ahead.
guess.
Go ahead.
The money that was spent for that item, Dr. Manco, was 19,000.6, but you actually, it was tripled, right? $20,000 was spent, but the next budget next year is for 60,000, which means that it was 3 times the amount instead of
No, it
half.
was
But you didn't.
So I
Let's
think
say
you're
what
looking
the
at
numbers-
the Miss
I'm
Pelham,
looking
I
at
think
the
you're looking at
current
the wrong line item. The 19.6 that you see is what was paid out thus far from that 29,786. So it was
Yeah,
budgeted
it said-
at 30,000.
Okay, so you're gonna spend another 11,000 before the year ends? By year end, you have been spent $30,000. Is that what you're saying? You're gonna
Yes.
expend another. Okay. So I guess the thing I had with the other question I had to ask was with the phone, all the phone expenditures are from February. I guess, Mr. Altman, are all these figures reflected because they're, when it says the actual amount they spent thus far, that's through February? Is that correct?
Actually, if the mayor could scroll down just a little bit or make the top of the page come down a little bit.
Is that what you're talking about right here?
Well, I can't, if you can just scroll down so I can see the very top of this page.
On my screen, it looks fine. So I can't see what it looks like for you. Do you see it now? Just keep telling me to keep scrolling.
Keep scrolling down. Because there's a date at the top of the page. And there we go. So these are cost as of 4/27 of April 27th. That's what the actuals are.
So like, in this budget, like if you have a $40,000 item, you only spent 20, are we supposed to assume that $20,000 going back into the general, since you told people to stop ordering? Would that mean all that excess money?
So we have to, what we did was so when we said we're making essential purchases only, so there's departments are still purchasing essential items, so there will be money left over. But in this case, with regard to her disaster recovery funds, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Manker, the cost for the first year, which it's not a full year, was $30,000. So we will be billed that amount of money before the end of the year because that's the cost per the agreement. And then for the upcoming year, we had to increase it to $60,000. So she's going to spend those funds between now and the end of the year because it's an essential service. That's our disaster recovery backup for our network off-site in a cloud. So we'll spend those funds.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions before you finish this section? Dr. Maker, my only question is regarding storage. Were we able to remedy the issue?
Yes,
The issue regarding storage?
Yes, the storage project was a capital project and it was completed during this budget cycle. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. You can go to the next section if you have one.
And so I think the last line item in question is the $65,000. It looked to some of you guys as if it was being repeated. And so the first one was the disaster recovery, and the 65,000 line item is the continuation of the implementation of voice over IP. And as I stated earlier, we're currently running two different phone systems, and it's really costing us to run two phone systems. So we would like to continue to roll out the remainder of voice over IP to social services and courts, and that should complete the rest of the city. And then our phone bill will be reduced. It was reduced from our original phone bill was $7,500 a month. With voice over IP, we've been able to reduce the phone bill down to $3,000 a month. So if we continue to run the old phone system against the new phone system, we're looking at $36,000 of the old phone system along with the new phone system. And then that doesn't include the maintenance cost that comes along with the old phone system and the maintenance costs for the new phone system. So this request is here, this 65,000 request is here is in efforts to move social services over. And then next year, it'd be another request to move courts over, and that should complete the rollout for voice over IP in the city.
Thank you. Councilor Pelham.
Are they aware that they get a new system as well? That'll be unified since they're stating this, the people in the courts, they actually a state building. Are they in agreement to coming onto our computer on our line with the phones?
Mr. City Manager can chime in here if I'm getting something wrong, but it's to my understanding that we provide phone services to the courts. So the current phone system that they have is our phone system. That is part of the agreement in the services that we are responsible for providing to them. And they are not on the schedule in this upcoming budget. They will be on the schedule for the next budget.
So with all the extra $125,000 and the standing $44,000, what is going to actually be the difference from that $195,000 in the upcoming years once you get everybody, get the social services in court scene?
So your phone bill should reduce. So there won't be the reason why your phone bill is decreasing is because we're making phone calls over the internet. We are paying for internet services. So your phone bill will be eliminated. And let me back up. It will not be totally eliminated. There are some analog lines that we have to maintain throughout the city. And most of those analog lines reside in the police department and the fire department. So there will be a small telephone bill, but there no longer be that $7,500 a month telephone bill that we're paying to the telephone company, which is Verizon. So 7,500
$90,000.
times.
90,000 a year. But what is the 40? So you said all the costs for the phone bills for every department that has a phone bill will be extracted, or you still will be dividing the total cost in departments?
So the departments will no longer have a phone bills to be extracted from each department.
That's my question. So that'll be eliminated.
Yes, ma'am.
That will be eliminated. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for IT? So I have some questions I have wrote down about your overall budget. And if it requires a long explanation, I could talk to you offline, but if it's something you can answer really quickly, then that's fine. In terms of online payments and forms, since everybody's moving to remote working and trying to use technology due to COVID-19, is there any additional funding that you would need to have in your budget to help us move to more online forms? And I've been asking about this because I feel like there's so many things that we have online that could be an online submission that goes straight to people's email. Or even I've gotten some complaints from residents regarding payments to make it easier to submit payments online, for example, sewer and trash, and accept like more credit card, debit card payments and through several systems. I know that there's opportunities across the city to do that. Would that require additional funding to implement either online forms and or online payments?
So the short answer is, I don't know what that cost will be. I am working with the Treasurer Department, the Fire Department, and the Development Department as we speak. And I emailed over the Treasurer Department some things to look over today. But we are in conversation on how to best take online payments and move things into an online environment. We're currently looking at some vendors, and they just generated some costs for us today to see what it would take for us to be able to accomplish that goal. Now, in the near future, in a couple weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, we will be able to schedule individuals or citizens to come into these various departments that are citizen facing to make payments, so they're not in the hallways or in the more than 10 together. And I think DMV and Treasurer and the Development Department has all agreed to go on the scheduler. So I'm in the process of creating that. And far as the digital forms, that's a part of the discussion with the Treasurer Department too, which is ongoing, how we can best get some of these forms online so people can access the things that they need digitally without having to make that trip to come in or stand in line or stand outside. And so we just haven't gotten to the stage where there's a figure that's put to that because the investigation just started a couple weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. The next question is regarding Public Works. When we implemented the constituent complaint portal, we discovered that Public Works had an integration problem. I guess they were still using their old software when we talked about where Munis and other platforms were in terms of usage. Where are we at with trying to bring Public Works into the complaint module? And would there be an extra cost if we just completely come over to Munis as opposed to using the software that they're currently in?
it would be an extra cost to, I don't want to say integrate. They need to, I would say to fully utilize the TIMS module. There would be a cost, and I'm not really sure where we left off with them. You know, a lot of things happen, and we all try to make do with the best that we have, and we kind of forget things. So I would need to follow up with the Public Works Department to see, you know, why they are not utilizing the TIMS module fully, and what we can do to remedy the problem.
If I remember correctly, there's an issue with the work order software. So that the issue, if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Mayor, was people would go into the work order or to the TIMS piece, enter a project, and then when it moved from there over the work order, it would close it out in TIMS because it was over in the work order. Even though the work hadn't been completed yet, it would close it out in TIMS as if it was a completed project. So the issue was, and if I remember correctly, Dr. Manker, we had put a request in to Munis, to Tyler, to see if they could develop a way of allowing that project not to close out, but only close out once it's completed in the work order program, because their work order software is a Munis product, if I remember correctly, but it's just a matter of it dropping out of TIMS and acting as if it's a completed project when really it's just been assigned a work order number in Public Works to be then completed on that side. So it was a matter of getting TIMS and the work order piece to work together. And I think we had talked to Tyler, and I think that there were several other people that had made a similar request, but we were waiting for Tyler to get back to us with regard to a potential patch or a fix, if I'm remembering correctly. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Manker.
I think you summarized it correctly.
Okay, so he's got to get back with me to see where they are. Yeah, me to see where they are. I have two more questions off of the same line. We talked about the audit and trying to work on solutions. Again, social services and CSA were brought up. And I know we were told that CSA started doing their own implementation because they needed to move forward and finance wasn't free to help them at the time. So they volunteered to do it themselves. But with social services, if I remember what the auditor said in that meeting, they're pretty much running two systems in tandem and having to manually bring that information over for reconciliations or something with a third party, something with information regarding their finances. With that and the other modules that we have purchased but are not being used, do we have that money in the budget now to fully implement them in this upcoming year?
No, there was no monies designated to help them implement or to help both softwares talk to each other. You know, with the COVID-19, everybody is having to dial back what it is they need and what they're asking for. And so it's not that they're not working. They both systems work. It is an added step for them to have to take over the information and plug it into the other system. And then we also have the personnel issues that coincide with you know, the availability issues over in finance. It's still a project that finance has to be involved in. And at this moment in time, his staffing is low. So because they're running and they're up and running, it's not the best solution, but hopefully next budget we can begin to address some of these issues once the CAFR is completed and once COVID is behind us.
Okay, and the Wi-Fi, I know the schools rolled out their buses. And I talked to Dr. Hackney before they rolled them out. I sent her and Mr. Altman an email to see if the city could partner with that project before they had rolled it out, because yes, the students need help with getting internet access, but also those who are teleworking now in this new environment. Some people don't have the internet. Like we have some council members who don't have internet service because it's not part of what they do in their normal life. So I know you had an interest in becoming a smart city and working on Wi-Fi. You presented that to council before. I think especially now people are teleworking, and it's going to be for the foreseeable future. Even when we go back to normal life, there's going to be some aspect of people working more remotely. But then also those who have lost their jobs, they need to have internet access to be able to look for future jobs. So what were the figures for that Wi-Fi project to be able to start trying to get some open Wi-Fi around the city to help potentially with resident internet access?
So resident internet access was never a part of the discussion. It was more geared towards economic development and enticing businesses to come downtown and maybe offer some Wi-Fi incentive. I do not have those figures in front of me. I'll be happy to email those to the city manager and he can pass them along to you so you can review. And then if council would like to have a further discussion about how to go about with this, then I'll be happy to.
Thank you. My last question is, go ahead, Mr. Altman, go ahead.
If I could add on to Dr. Minker's comments, what we looked at was a pilot for downtown to make Wi-Fi available for businesses, restaurants and whatnot in downtown and potentially residents. But we did talk about wanting to move more to a smart city and having internet access throughout the city, Wi-Fi available. Those costs, we'd have to have fiber connections at more than one place throughout the city. But that's something that we have the ability to build off of our fiber network, but also potentially in conjunction with talking to schools, because schools have fiber laid between all of their school buildings. Then we can maybe build off of that and look to, in the future, create a network here in the city that not only provides benefit to businesses, but also to residents, and then some potential benefits for the city also with equipment in the areas. So no, we definitively would like to become a smart city and move in that direction. It's just been a matter of cost to be able to do that.
And my last question is regarding the open finance software. We talked about that supposed to be live this fiscal year, but we're behind on getting that. And there was some discussion about, we were told that it was purchased, but then we found out it wasn't purchased. So in this upcoming in this budget, is the cost for the software that council voted on included in this or finances budget for the open finance system?
Not in my budget. The city manager, I will let the city manager respond on that. Just to my understanding that he was using some contingency funds to look to see how to purchase that software.
Right. We would use contingency funding to purchase the software. It's not in the current year's budget. It wasn't included in either finance or IT, as it was a discussion during the budget process. And when the budget was approved, there wasn't any amendment to include that software. So we would just look to utilize contingency to purchase that software in the current year and then begin implementation.
Perfect. Councilor Randolph?
Speaking of that, we have voted to do OpenGov, but what is the cost of that, Mr. City Manager?
I'm trying to remember, Dr. Manker, it was 25,000.
Yes.
That may be something that we would want to rediscuss before we automatically get it in a contingency, since we're trying to cut and maybe put that off till next year, if that's a possibility.
So if we were to talk about that, I think if I heard you, Mr. Altman, correctly, you're saying using this year's contingency to purchase the open finance system and not put it in next year's budget. And then Council Randolph, you're saying maybe have a conversation about including it in next year's budget and not using contingency from this year, correct?
Well, I just think we need to have another discussion about it to see where it fits in better than, just automatically putting in a contingency. So maybe at the next council meeting, let's see we can put something on the agenda or discuss it again as to where we want it to be, whether it needs to be in somebody's budget for next year and where, and does it make sense? Or if, or are we still on board with just doing a contingency? I don't like contingencies. I would rather it have a line item if we're going to do it.
Or even taking the money from this year's budget since it's there and then moving it over to next year. But I'm adding this to the list of topics.
Yeah.
As another council member asked me how we're following up on this, and I sent Mr. Altman the email. I was going to follow up with him. I think all these questions that we have lingering that we're still waiting for answers for, that will have to be a work session in itself just to go through all of these. So let Mr. Altman go through all the department budgets first, and then we can tackle all of these lingering questions that I'm tracking for everyone. So I'll put that down for a future conversation so we don't lose it. And Councilor Pelham has her hand raised as well. And you have to unmute your line, Councilor Pelham.
It's already voted on. Is something, excuse me, that should happen. However, with the potential, I don't know, this budget might yield some potential savings. $25,000 doesn't sound like a lot if it's compatible to go into Munis and do something. I mean, does it have to be adaptable to Munis, or is it going to be another separate running entity in finance?
So Councilor Pelham, to address your question, Open Finance is a Tyler Munis product. So
Okay,
it would
well,
be integrated.
That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. Okay.
The question at hand is one of timing. So I understand we wouldn't want to put it in contingency, but contingency is where we would take the funds from the current budget year to make the purchase. If council doesn't want to make that purchase in the current budget year, we can put money in a line item for next budget year, but we need to know that before we adopt the budget, so we know if we're buying it this year or next year. That decision point will have to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, so we'll put it on at a future meeting, but as Councilor Pelham stated, we already took action on it. So unless the action's reversed, that's the direction we need to move in. But I'll make sure we talk about it at a subsequent work session with the other asks that have been put out there from everyone. And I have the note for it for that. And just so that the public understands what we're talking about, Open Finance, well, I don't know if that's the correct name of the program. Yeah, Open Finance is a software that will allow the public to be able to view our budget in real time in a user-friendly format. Right now, if you were to go to the city's website, you'll see a PDF version of our budget, and it's kind of complicated for those who are not really in government or have experience with reading our budget. So what this does is it breaks it down, and it has charts, graphics, and things of that nature. So you can easily see how the money is being divided up at the local level. And there's other cool features in it that really makes this user-friendly and more transparent. And it does integrate into Munis, so that way it's in real time. But as we stated, it was voted on, it was supposed to be implemented in July. I know we got pushed back. So since it still hasn't been purchased, I understand Councilor Randolph's question about if we're going to move forward with it this year still or wait till next year. But we'll make sure that conversation is had at the work sessions coming up after we finish the department rundown. So I do have a note with that. And just to be clear, before we pass the let the others speak, Mr. Altman, what I'm tracking for IT is to confirm where we are with the integration of public works with Munis, to give the Wi-Fi figures. And that's the only two questions that I actually see that haven't been answered yet. I think the questions about service contracts have been addressed. And then the note will be to add open finance discussion to a work session at the end of this. Is that what you're tracking as well?
That's what I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure we're current. Councillor Pelham and Councillor Randolph, I think Councillor Randolph had her hand up first.
All I'm going to do is just remind everybody that it's almost 9 o'clock. We still have several other people that are waiting to present their budgets. So I just encourage us to move along quicker to get as much done as we can tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councillor Pelham.
Nothing.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else for Dr. Manker before we move on from IT?
That completes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Next group that we have on the agenda was police, and Mr. Altman said they've been moved to a different date. So I think we're dropping down to Sheriff Department now. Mr. Altman, is that correct?
However, council would like to take them, if you take them in the order of the sheets in your packet, I think it's Commissioner Revenue, then Treasurer, Circuit Court Clerk, and then Sheriff. But if you'd like to go to the Sheriff first, I'm sure, and Commonwealth Attorney, and then the Sheriff. So
We'll go in order of the document I have on the screen, so I don't have to keep scrolling back around to try to find the department. So Commissioner of Revenue should be first, right?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you have the floor, and if you have the Commissioner of Revenue would like to speak on behalf of her office, then she has the floor as well.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, to answer the first question that I received, we have 7 full-time employees. Of those 7, the State Compensation Board pays for 3 of them. Of those 3 employees, the city's portion of those salaries is a total of $104,859. The $10,549 is for fringe benefits that the comp board pays. The city picks up $215,815 for the remainder of the salaries for those 7 employees. Does that answer your questions for the employees?
Yeah.
Council, does anyone have any questions regarding salary? All right, go ahead, Ms. Reason.
Thank you. Okay, the Commissioner of Revenue had intended on utilizing a portion of the 80% of DMV funds to fund a part-time employee beginning in 2020. We did have a part-time employee that came in. I think she worked 2 days before COVID-19 began, so that money was not utilized. So I need to understand how that will be used, because I understood from Mr. Terry that the part-time money I requested was going into salaries.
Okay, can you, when you say the part-time money you requested was going into salaries, can you explain that a little bit further so council's on the same page, because we weren't included in those conversations, and then Mr. Terry or Mr. Allman can address your question.
I just emailed this past week when I found out y'all had these questions, because I wasn't sure how that would work. Further down, you'll see where some questions were asked, and my budget started with 10,000 appropriations from DMV, and then I requested the remainder, which was $20,248. And of that, I've spent $65, which was to purchase a key fob. That's the monies that we earn our 80% back from DMV. It's more than that at this time right now. Yesterday's report I received, so we're at $27,600 and some now. So what I'm saying is I need to understand if the money for those salaries is going to be in my budget. I don't want to lose the remainder of the monies coming in to be able to utilize it if I need, like I do need a new printer, or for fees for the girls when they work over and different things.
And to be clear, that is on the screen, the miscellaneous expenditure line at the bottom where it says $10,000. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Terry, Mr. Altman, can you jump in and try to address her question, please?
Well, I think, and if she can correct me if I'm wrong, I think one, there's a concern that she's going to lose that $10,000 because council's talking about eliminating all miscellaneous line items. And I think one, she has some expenditure that she needs to address towards that. She just doesn't, if she doesn't have a printer line item in her budget that if she needed to buy it, so she budgeted $10,000 in miscellaneous to address some of those things that would come up during the year. I think that's part of her concern there, and she can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct.
So that's there. And then with regard to the part-time piece, we can work on that part-time position aspect we've had that conversation with the amount of work that they do with DMV. They're bringing in additional revenue every year. So she and I can have a conversation offline about that. But I think her big concern was, what happens if council eliminates all miscellaneous expenditures? What happens to that $10,000 that she may need to make a purchase during the year?
And just for clarity, the $10,000 is her 80% back from the DMV services. So is it merely a matter of being concerned that council is going to wipe away all miscellaneous expenditures, or the office not recouping that they're coming back in? Is that what the question really is about?
I just want to make sure, because we weren't able to utilize it with the part-time, because I didn't even get that till right before the COVA, that we don't lose it's actually 20-some thousand dollars now, because I had it transferred from, Depot did it for me, and I had spoke with Mr. Altman and Mr. Terry about getting this done for part-time money. That's what I was using our 80% for this year, was for part-time help. But if I'm not going to be able to use that for that, I don't want to lose it, because that's monies we've actually earned above and beyond our normal budget.
So this is talking about money this year that you weren't able to use. Instead of it going back to general fund, you want to make sure you keep it within your department.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's really not about the miscellaneous line item itself. It's about keeping the 80% that you guys have earned. You don't want to go back to general fund.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we would need to bring a request to council in June for her to carry over $20,000 from current year to next year of those that DMV reimbursement.
Okay. And that will pay for your part-time person. Okay.
Well, that's what I will be utilizing most of it for. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Counselor Pelham, thank you.
But in your budget line item where it says part-time wages, you already have a projection of $17,490, well, $500 almost. So what is that money going to be? If that's for the part-time position, why would you need?
I think that's why we're asking this question, to find out if that money there is what the city is funding, or is that coming out of the DMV money?
No,
That's what my question was.
You don't fund money, part-time wages, that it's already in your budget. So the other thing is, you said, Ms. Altman said your department generate money for us, and you said it's 80% that you utilize for your budget. So what part of that money does the city get to put back in the general fund?
The city gets 20%, I get 80%.
Oh, okay. So.
And if it hadn't been for COVA, I think we probably would have been close to 80,000 this year, I do believe.
Okay, that's great.
Probably more than that, but I'm just gonna keep it basically small.
But so my thing is, it looks like you already programmed it, like I say, 17,500 for a part-time position. So you wouldn't need $10,000, $20,000 for another part-time position, because that you already have it in the budget from the general fund.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, really.
Mrs. Pelham, and Madam Mayor, Mrs. Pelham, you're correct.
Thank you. All right.
The point of clarity, Councilor Pelham, if you don't mind, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. I think when you were asking your question, the Commissioner of Revenue said that's what she needed clarity for. So
Okay.
that $17,000 that's in the part-time line item, is that her 80% match to date? Is that, because that's what I think her concern is. Is that what that is, Mr. Terry?
From the general fund, that was pretty,
Yes.
So the 17.5 that's in the proposed budget would be for next year, utilizing a portion of that 80% match. The money that we're concerned about this year for carryover, we'd have to identify what those funds are. The $20,000 for carryover, we have to bring that back to council in June for you to authorize the carryover. Otherwise, it just goes to the bottom line of the general fund.
So when you say that you're going to talk to her offline about part-time, that doesn't address this current projection that we have here. You're still talking about the DMV money from this year?
you contradicted from what Mr. Terry just said.
Yeah, that's what.
Can we settle this offline
No,
and get back to the
I'm
regular
sorry.
budget? They don't know what's going on. There's a
Well,
difference between
Counselor
Mr.
Randolph,
Terry,
can-
Mr. Altman.
No.
Counselor Randolph, can
I'm
you?
asking that the three of them get together and do this offline so we can get back to the line items that she does understand and finish her budget tonight.
So Counselor Randolph, thank you for your opinion. We still have questions. And so Mr. Altman, can you finish answering the questions that we have right now, sir, please?
So I believe Mr. Terry, when Mrs. Pelham made the comment that the 17.5 that's in the proposed budget was for her part-time position, I believe Mr. Terry said, Mrs. Pelham, you're correct. So that's money in the proposed.
I said it was from the general fund. It was not from DMV.
Well, so the DMV money comes in and then is distributed out as part of the general fund, right? So that those funds, we have funds in the budget, so we could then reimburse ourselves the 17.5. What she's concerned about is the current year money and being able to carry that over, which is what we have to bring back in June.
So Ms. Commissioner Reason, is that correct? So we're good with this request regarding your part-time wages. We need to bring that money over from the end of the year for this year. And does that address your concern? So we're all on the same page?
Yes, ma'am. And any other monies above the $17,499 will be addressed as they come in the new fiscal year.
Oh, okay, adding them to it. Okay, got it.
Right, because if I make 80,000, I get more than, I get 80% of the 80,000 or whatever I bring into our city, and y'all get 20%. So, I mean, it's just going to be an ongoing thing. We're just going to have to see what we make.
Mhm.
We're trying our best to make as much money as we can.
Okay. Counselor Plum, you have another question before she can continues her other portion of her presentation?
I just had a question about the service contracts. Why did the increase happen so much?
Okay, well, we'll let her finish doing her presentation, and if she gets to that section, we'll stop to ask questions, but we'll just do it by section. So Ms. Reason, do you have another section that you want to go over so we can stop to ask questions about that one?
Okay, the question about for the part-time employee, the answer was actually no. The monies was requested, the $30,000 was for legal fees, because I was told that the city attorney did not handle tax problems. So I have no way of having monies for an attorney or anyone to talk to when I need someone for my office. That was the request for that monies. That's what the $30,000 is that I requested.
So that's because our attorney is not, so the council needs to decide whether or not we want our city attorney to assist you in your work or pay $30,000 from the general fund for your office. Is that correct?
That is correct, because I have to have counsel. I've always had, someone from the attorney's office at my fingertips, basically. I'm sure y'all are aware we have a lot that goes on. Half of it you never hear about, but it's always taken care of, and we've always worked with city attorneys in the past on all tax matters. So, I mean, I need to be able to get to somebody when I need to talk to somebody about these matters.
Yeah.
I handled the last two myself. We have stuff right now that's at the state level that we're dealing with. So I may need an attorney for that. So I have to look to what we need to utilize for those fees.
And did you come up with that number from your peers or just talking with our city attorney to figure out how much it would cost per year?
Actually, I had spoke with someone previously that worked in the city attorney's office, and that was the basic idea that we came up with, you know, for just utilizing what we would need, basically.
Mhm.
It's hard to estimate because I'm sure you're aware of these manufacturers. When I have things that go on and they go to suing or wanting to fight my assessment, I have to have an attorney at my hands.
Right, okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. And as I said, we have one now that's up at the tax commissioner's office. So I know I'm going to need something at this point already.
Okay, we'll put that on the list to follow up with as well. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Denton.
Thank you. Okay.
Counselor Denton.
Yes, I think this, is something we as a council will need to talk about. And it may help us, be able to help the Commissioner of Revenue out a little bit more. So, I do think we need to put this on the agenda and discuss it further.
Thank you. I'll make note of that for you and Counselor Palm. Does that complete your comments right now, Counselor Denton?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I have a note of that. Ms. Reason, is there anything else that you want to address in your budget for council?
Yes, ma'am. The last question that I was asked was on miscellaneous, and we went through most of that, which was the DMV funds that were put aside. So out of that $20,248, the $65 that was spent, that was for key fobs, which we have to purchase every 2 years. And at this time, there's 7 of us, so that's how many we would be purchasing every 2 years. And other than that, I thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a general question about her overall budget at this time? And Counselor Denton, your hand is up. I'm not sure if it's from the last.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, no one said anything. So Mr. Altman, from this section of the budget, I have a note to add to, I guess, the future work session regarding the other pending topics to talk about the 30K in legal fees. Do you have anything else you're tracking?
That would be the big item.
Okay, and then I think we're on the same page now regarding the part-time money, and then we have to make a note for the end of the year for her to come back regarding keeping her 80% match.
Yeah, I have that as a thing to do for June.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner Reason. Thank you for your time. We'll follow up on both of those items subsequently. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Moving on, we have the treasurer's budget is up next, if I'm correct, Mr. Altman, based off of the workbook.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'll give you the floor, and also the city treasurer. You guys are free to do your presentation.
I will gladly turn it over to Ms. Gossier for her to discuss her budget request with council.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the time. Our budget is comprised of delivering 3 quality Cs to the city of Hopewell. The C stand for customer service, which is our frontline personnel. Last year, City Council generously gave us our first ever full-time cashier. This individual came to us with 30 years of banking and financial operations experience, and she has totally helped us in revamping the the front office portion of the first C, which is cash collections, getting it to the bank, making sure that there are procedures, that there are very clearly defined roles for the part-time individuals. So she serves as the supervisor over 2 part-time cashiers, which is new. It's worked out to be extremely effective. She's been out of the office for about 2 weeks now, and we've been able to operate successfully due to the documentation, the training that she created, as well as the policies and procedures. She will be back with us on the 26th, and so we are looking forward to having her back. But we had our litmus test of being able to see how that high quality staff person with experience blended with Munis training when she first started would help the department long run. So part of our budget request is to be able to maintain that type of person. We have $1 million system in Munis, but yet we continued historically to not have the type of staff to successfully navigate through that system. And I think that's very important. You've got to compensate people, and you've got to provide the right training when they first start in order to make it a win-win situation for the citizens who come to the counter and expect a person to be able to address their concerns in a timely fashion. The second C of our budget stands for collections. We have 2 outstanding high energy collectors who have partnered with Jason Dunn and Associates that has increased our bank balances by over $10 million. We can attribute it to the on-time bills that have been going out to individuals, the follow-up and follow-through to those individuals. And you'll see that in some of the line items dealing with the postage, being more responsive, getting things out proactively, not just billing at the legal bill dates, but also following up in personal ways to get to taxpayers that they admittedly had not paid their taxes in quite a long time. It's therefore, I believe, cut down on costs for citizens, because instead of everybody having to look at having their taxes raised, I think that the citizens appreciate what council and the city manager has been able to do this year by keeping the tax rate stable, so that the individuals who are delinquent are now coming forward. I mean, we've got people that have really expressed a strong desire, even in COVID-19 culture, to pay their taxes, to get their money in here to us. The third C is the CAFR team. This consists of a CPA, certified public accountant, and we have an opening for a part-time certified public accountant. Those 2 roles are also critical that they are staffed and compensated accordingly to the market. Once again, you cannot expect to have seamless audits and seamless CAFR done if you don't have qualified, competent, certified public accountants, making sure that the entries that are posted and that the revenues and checks that are received are going to the correct accounts. So right now we have an opening for the part-time CPA position, and I'm hoping that we're able to retain the individual that we have right now as a contractor, which you see in the line item for professional services. We used Robert Half for 7 part-time individuals throughout the year to get us through our staffing. I've highly recommended the organization to others, because the types and the caliber of people that they've given us have been very strong in their technical skills, as well as their ability to answer calls and deal with the public. So that giving you the highlight, we have a very small molecular team right now. One of the questions that was asked was how many full-time employees are in our line item for full-time salary. And that line item consists of 5 individuals, including myself. We have the full-time cashier, the full-time delinquent collector, and the full-time CPA. And we have one opening, which is a deputy treasurer position. The other question that I was asked to address was on the professional services. And I think I answered that. That is Robert Half International, which we used throughout the year for cashier assistance, audit prep with the finance group, and also for delinquent collections, customer service, answering the phones. We have, you had a question about the miscellaneous expense. That's primarily, as the commissioner said, it's been used in the past for the DMV FOBS tokens. It's also was used in the past for an unexpected travel trip that an individual used last year for Munis training. And it was used for office supplies and Verizon phone service. The other category that we were asked was service contracts. That's primarily what we use for our shredding services. Obviously, we have to keep things confidentially shredded. For billing for our real estate, personal property vendors, storage fees, the alarm service. We have an alarm service for our office. Copier repairs, when the copier goes down, it's under contract to be quickly repaired. And our Treasurers Association dues and legal services. And that's what's under the service contracts. For, I think there was a question about our postage increase. We have historically used both our own internal postage as well as the utilization of BMS Direct, as well as DivCo printing. And so they charge us for the postage. What I calculated that they charge us, we would not be able to do on our own. They get bulk rates as well as being able to provide us with some of their postage services. So we generally bill out about 40,000 pieces of mail. So if you did the math on 50 cents per item, 20 grand is about where you would expect the budget to be. Next year, we asked for a little bit more because we're doing an outreach called Hopewell on Up, where we're going out into the community. We're doing financial literacy, financial empowerment, and also trying to partner with some of our banks to provide services and information to citizens. So with that increase there, that increase explains for the newspaper ad increase as well as the postage increase. Training, we've asked for an additional 5,000 simply because in the past it was buried in conventions and conferences, and that's truly not reflective of having a brand new team. No one in the department has been in the same role except myself for the last 365 days. So with a new team, I wanted that isolated $5,000 to show the investment required if you're going to have a stable, qualified, and competent treasurer's office. You have to invest in training. We also have increased the part-time wages and the full-time salary because I do need a full-time CPA. I need to have the flexibility to replace individuals with, I would say, experienced, technically skilled individuals. The CAFRs call for it. You cannot take $12 an hour positions and expect $25 an hour performance. And that is what I'm asking City Council support for, to making sure that this team is cross-trained, is competent, and is collegial, that they enjoy being here, because how they feel is how they will project that onto the citizens that come to the windows, on the phone, or by email. So overall, our goal is to provide high quality collections, CAFR support, and cashier customer service support for all 22,000 citizens in Hopewell. And doing this through constant restructuring and making sure at the same time all the state obligations are made.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Before we continue, we have 25 minutes left. We do have two other offices that was noted earlier, but we can get through those tonight if council just stays to address the other two offices, and then we can start Mr. Altman's schedule on time with the next session. So is there a motion to extend this meeting to address the treasurer's office and the other two that we have waiting on the line?
Oh, I'll make that motion to extend for 30 minutes. Until we finish those two offices.
And I'll second that. The motion on the floor is to extend till we finish the other two offices as well. Is that up for discussion? No one's hands are raised. Madam Clerk, can you proceed with roll call, please?
Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett, you're muted, Vice Mayor. Counselor Randolph,
It's actually three offices. I'm sorry, three offices. So before we continue, we have three offices. Counselor Plum, are you fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you were on Counselor Randolph?
yes.
Okay.
I don't think I see her on anymore.
Continue.
Counselor Denton,
No.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
So the roll call, I said yes. Counselor Pelham said yes. Vice Mayor Bennett was silent, which equals a yes when you're still in the meeting, and Denton said no. So according to my notes, that's a majority, so we'll continue, correct? Do you have the same thing, Ms. Brown?
yes.
Okay, continue, Madam Treasurer.
So that was the conclusion. My budget was decreased according to what I saw published by $13,000. I would like that to be restored back. My total ask was for the full-time CPA position, which, and as the commissioner stated earlier, we do get funding from the state, which does not show anywhere in any of the materials that I saw. I asked the city manager earlier, there's a portion of our budget called cost recovery. And I was just wondering if that could not be used. It's account object code 479922. I don't know if the finance director is still on, but it seems to me that we should be able to use that cost recovery account for revenue to show the money that comes from the state, because it does cover the cost of most of the treasurer's salary.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gosier, I'm checking the attendance and I just saw the vice mayor drop off of the meeting. She just dropped off within this minute. Just want to make sure that, Madam Clerk, can you check to see if you're seeing the same things? I just saw her drop off.
Yes, I no longer see her.
Next question.
Not right now. Can you hold on 1 second? Because without her on here, we don't have a quorum to continue anymore.
Can you see if it was a technical why she dropped off instead of just?
I know, I'm trying to work my way through. Give me 1 second. The person joining us on by phone, is that Mr. Terry?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll have to recess for a couple of minutes so that the clerk can be able to contact her. I know you have a question, Counselor Pelham, but technically speaking, we don't have a quorum anymore because Counselor Randolph jumped off and Vice Mayor Bennett just dropped off the line. So without 4 people being here, we technically don't have a meeting at this time, and I don't want to get in trouble for continuing. Counselor Denton, can you hold on 1 second? Everyone will mute your lines for just 1 moment. Madam Clerk, can you please call Vice Mayor Bennett to see if it was a technical issue on her end, please?
Yes,
No.
ma'am.
Eve Randolph too.
And call Counselor Randolph. So we'll recess for 3 minutes, please. And IT, can you mute everyone's line for the next 3 minutes, please? Madam Clerk, are you back on the line? Are you still calling? IT, can you please unmute Ms. Brown so when she is complete, we can get her update and complete the recess, because I don't have that control right now, please.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I have a train going by my house right now, but I'm here.
Oh, no, you're fine. I did call patience. Oh, was that patience?
Yep, this me. I'm back up now.
Okay, great. So we have Vice Mayor Bennett back on the line. We have Counselor Denton still present. Counselor Pelham's still here. And I'm still here, so we have a quorum. Were you able to reach Counselor Randolph, Ms. Brown?
Yes, Council Randolph said she was having technical difficulties as well, and she was trying to get back on.
Okay, all right, perfect. So at least we have a quorum for right now, and I'll be sure to double check. I'll keep checking the screen to see if she joins, and then to make sure she has a chance to ask her questions before we move on. So thank you for that. We'll just annotate the recess in our minutes. I wrote down the time is 9:28, so we've come back now at 9:32. And we'll just keep that for the record. So where we left off at, I asked the treasurer if she was complete with her presentation. She said yes, just to be sure. And if so, Counselor Pelham, you have the floor first, but Madam Treasurer, does that complete your initial presentation?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Counselor Pelham, you have the floor.
Yes, just a question about the money spent in your postage area. Will that be expended for the end of the fiscal year this year?
Most of it will, because it's coming from the bills that are about to go out. So the invoice will probably hit the end of June.
Okay. All right, and the other thing was with the ads, the same thing. You've only spent 300 some out of the 1,200. Would that be the same?
Yes, I'll have a share. I can show it.
No, now you don't have to do all that, just.
Okay. Yeah, basically the timing on it, because the newspaper progress index ads are $300. We have to do those by law 10 days before the due date, and then do as a courtesy the cable TV with Mr. Tommy Wells. And so those invoices won't get to our account until the end of June. They'll fall in fiscal year 2020, but they won't, you don't see them right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, Counselor Denton, do you have any questions regarding the treasurer's overall budget at this time?
No, I do not. Thank you.
No problem. Vice Mayor Bennett, do you have any questions regarding the budget?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Randolph, I don't see you, but just to make sure, are you? Okay, I have one question regarding a comment that you made regarding decreasing your budget. I know Counselor Pelham had asked about that before in an earlier work session, and I think Mr. Altman explained it as something to do with benefits, if I'm correct. And if so, Mr. Altman, can you address that point that was made, please?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. If you're looking at what you have up on the screen, there's a reduction in the line items revolving around benefits. So that 13-ish thousand dollars that we're talking about is the result of the turnover in the treasurer's office and resulting in different selections from VRS requirements and employee health insurance are the two big line items where there's reductions in the cost. So it has nothing to do with taking money out of the operations side of the budget. And again, we didn't authorize or recommend any new positions in the budget. It's simply a function of different insurance and VRS requirements based on new staff in the positions that the treasurer has and the selections that they've made as far as health insurance.
Madam Treasurer, you said that you had a full-time changeover in your staffing. So does this budget account for that person moved over to full-time if we approve this with the benefit side?
The full-time person was built into the July 1. I mean, they were built in from the July 1, 2019. So they were already budgeted for in this budget.
Okay, so does
talk about the full-time CPA, that person, no, it's not reflected in this budget.
I thought you said that you moved that position up to being a full-time person. So is that request not in here? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not in there.
Oh, it was just a request that wasn't funded.
Right.
Okay. Did Mr. Altman answer the question regarding the 13? Is there anything else we need to follow up on that 13K you were referring to?
Well, I guess it works in reverse. So if you have a staff that makes other selections and it was to increase by $13,000, would that have been your bottom line? Would your bottom line go up according to the selections of your staff? Because when we built our budget, we were told that we could not really influence anything from the comp and ben portion. So it just felt as if we were reducing $13,000 of operating ability arbitrarily because we don't have control over the comp and ben selections of our staff.
Okay, Mr. Altman, do you have anything to share with that, or is that still just the position still the same?
No, we fund benefits based upon employee selection for their health insurance. So I wouldn't fund and let's just take myself. Why would the city fund me for family level of health insurance when I only select single employee only? So we don't fund, we fund based on their selections, and then VRS is a function of salaries that come in. So as changes are made and new people are brought on board, those things occur. So yes, if the staff was there and there was a new staff came on and it resulted in an increase in health insurance, yes, we would cover that cost. But as a result of the decrease, we wouldn't fund the health insurance line item any more than would be necessary to meet the needs of the employees in the department. And no, we don't allow the individual departments to change the salary and benefits line items in the budget. They have the ability to manipulate, and that's why we have the requests that come in off to the side of positions that are requested by all departments. Because what we found in the past was that some departments may have been building those dollars into their budget and also making a request and ended up with more money than needed. So we freeze, when we do the budget, we freeze the salary and benefit lines, allow the departments to manipulate and add to their operating side, and then request that if you want a position, you make that submission. And if we then recommend approval of it, we set those monies aside. And if council then approves it, then once the budget's approved, we move those monies into the correct line items. But we don't allow departments to go in and add and subtract from their salary and benefit line items. But in this case, the reductions are the results of changes in benefits, not a reduction in operating ability. All the operating line items that are there are pretty much in line with what we funded in the past. And again, the reason that we did that with this year's budget with COVID is we don't know where we were. So we were funding everybody at the same level as we did in the current year. But
Okay,
there are some items that are increased.
okay. And Ms. Garcia, go back to look at the budget request to read over your CPA, because I know we're looking at the development office request, and it was another position that was mentioned for council to consider in the conversations. I have two other questions that I have for you. In terms of the in-house billing, Mr. Altman might have to jump in on this. Since we still have not remedied the contract with third-party biller, data integrators for the collections of the delinquent payments, wouldn't it just be better to just bring in a position to do all of the billing in-house? I know Mr. Almy said you were looking at that as well. What would that look like if we were to try to do that in this year's budget coming up, to bring all of that billing in-house, so that way we can just get rid of that whole entire contract with data integrators?
Well,
I'll let the city manager speak.
so one, I think before we were to make that decision, we would have to have a plan in place to do it and what it would look like and what it would cost. But also they have to be able to stand it up and train the employees. So you probably don't have an ability to just, cut the contract one day and start anew the next, because you won't have the things in place necessary. It's going to be a gradual migration from data integrators to the city for that to occur. It's very similar to implementing Munis when you have your old system in place and you just don't cut off one and start the other.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand that concept, because council didn't make the decision to cut off Munis. That was a staffing thing. So that was internal. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, my question is regarding that overall picture. What would that look like if we wanted to start that process next year? I understand why logically we wouldn't be able to get one immediately. But
I think logically, we would come back to council with a plan as to this is what we see billing looking like for those three bills. The stormwater will be a little bit different because we're going to be able to handle that and make changes to that. It's going to be part of our real estate billing for the December billing cycle. So that'll go out there, but you're really talking about the ability to handle trash and our wastewater billing. So we would need to come back with a plan to council as to what those staffing needs would be, where those individuals will be located and how that would work. That'll take a little bit of time for us to develop that plan. But I would think if council wants to look to try to move forward within the next budget year, you may be looking at potentially a mid-year adjustment to do something like that and get people in place. But again, we didn't make any recommendations on new positions just because we don't know the outcome of COVID-19 and how long that's going to go. So we felt it best to maintain the position of where we are with our employees and our employee level and not try to add anything new until we have some understanding of how long this pandemic is going to last.
True, but I mean, I agree with you. regarding the COVID thing, but if there's cost savings that we can get from getting rid of a contract that costs a lot of money versus bringing in somebody in-house to handle that billing, I mean, we'll gain money, not lose it. And I thought you guys were having those conversations. So are they not as advanced as I thought that they were in terms of having a proposed plan to bring back to us?
We don't have a plan. We know the direction we want to go in, but again, we're talking about utilization of a finite resource up in finance to do all of these things. So we're doing budget, we're doing CAFRs, we want to get CAFRs done. So we're trying to fix things as council is requested, get the CAFRs done, get the budget adopted. We can't do all of it at one time. We'd like to get the CAFRs finished and up to date, so we have the opportunity to concentrate on some of these items that we have in front of us that we know we want to do, but we haven't laid out a plan yet, as we've been trying to work to get everything right directly in front of us completed.
Okay, that's fine. We'll talk more offline because I know we have a lot of things, but the collections part, in terms of COVID, any other thing, any expenditures, the more money the city has in revenue, the better off that we can with projects. And there has been an issue with that contract with data integrators and over the years. I know it's been looked into. I know that last time I talked to you, said it's gone up in terms of the collection, but we need to start looking at overall how our revenue is coming in. And that leads to the next question with the treasurer's office. You showed us a while ago that you said you had $2 million in uncollected taxes or revenue, I believe is what you shared. And that conversation, I asked you, why is it so high? Can I see the list of the people who are outstanding? And in that conversation, you shared needing to possibly change our service, our legal services to help you with collections. Has that issue improved, because it has not come to council for that conversation?
Okay, yes, we signed a contract with Jason Dunn and Associates back in February. We haven't quantified, I'm sure. We have not collected as much cash in the door in 2.5 years as what he generated in 2.5 months. I can say that confidently with our team. We get an envelope of checks every single Friday from Jason Dunn and Associates, from past due delinquent taxes. Our collections just in 60 days, just phenomenal. So I have not had to come back to you all for anything other than I've provided. I think you all saw the collection report. And if not, I will get that to you all tomorrow, but I have a collection report based on ward, how many delinquent real estates, and it was significantly lower than where it was 2 years ago.
So what?
Thank you. Somebody said so what? So just be mindful that your lines are all unmuted, so please make sure you're muted on your end. The last question is with the reconciliations. I know that
my hand raised, you know.
I understand. I still had this is my line of questioning, so I will call on you. I asked first. So the last question is with reconciliations. I know there's been an issue with getting those turned over. Prior treasurer, this current department, do we need to have additional staffing to help with year-end reconciliation so that the audit can be prepared quicker?
Yes, definitely.
Can you elaborate on what that need would be?
The need would be right now, our accountant that we have working with us to go through the schools costs us $1,000 a week. So I would say if you, we even had them send us a file that was incorrect after working on it for a week. So that cost us $1,000. So it's costly, but if you want to get this fixed and caught up, I think it's a wise investment. We have the bank reconciliation training coming up at the end of the month. My office plans on being closed for a week so that we can all get the training that we need before the tax deadline and before we open up to the public. And in that vein, I would say annually, it would help to have a built-in training and a built-in third-party objective CPA to look at the data that we have and offer recommendations on how to fix the problem prior to going into the next fiscal year. We start the fiscal year every July 1. Every May, June should be a clean house time period where you have a CPA come in and look at a pre-audit of making sure that procedures are in place and that errors are caught, so that when the auditors come in after June 30th, it's not, there's no surprises. I mean, everything is pretty much documented, corrected, or at least there's a rhyme or reason not to keep the same thing happening July 1 of the new fiscal year.
Thank you. I see Counselor Denton has her hand raised, and Counselor Pelham. Counselor Denton.
I'm going to ask to be excused. I think we're getting off of the budget, and I can't believe we're going to keep these directors here after 10 o'clock at night when they have to work tomorrow. So I would like to be excused.
Can we ask them, can they stay or they prefer to be rescheduled? They worked all night. I mean, they've been here all night. I preferred it.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Counselor Denton, I could barely hear what you stated. Can you repeat yourself, please?
I said I would like to be excused. We're getting away from the budget as we received it today. And I think we're holding 3 directors, 4 directors maybe, and they have to work tomorrow, and I think it's 10 o'clock, and we need to be considerate of their time.
Okay, so I don't think we're getting away from the budget. We're all asking, I mean, who has asking? I'm
Discussion. I'm sorry.
I can't.
If we're going to stay here, if you're going to extend the meeting until we get through all of this, we'll be here till 12 o'clock. So I would like to be excused.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to respond to you. I just want to be clear that we're not off track of the budget. Everyone has questions if they have them, and they can ask. That's what the purpose of the work session is for. If you want to be excused, that is fine. Your excuse would mean that we don't have a quorum to finish the meeting, and so we'll have to adjourn. So the meeting is adjourned for lack of a quorum because all I see is Councilor Pelham, myself, and Vice Mayor Bennett. President, Mr. Altman, you'll have to reschedule the other constitutional officers for a subsequent meeting.
Apologies.
Well,
Madam Mayor, this is the sheriff. Could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Speaking, no, he can't because the meeting is adjourned. We don't have a quorum.
Well, if I may,
It's not a question about anything you need a quorum for.
Right, but I'm saying, what I'm telling you is the meeting is officially adjourned. Can you call me offline? Because we have to cancel, we have to get out of the software in order to be compliant with our meeting.
well, if I may say one thing, I've sent you all an amended budget.
Again, everyone, please, our meeting is adjourned. We can't continue conversation.
I'll have myself.
I can fall off so that there won't be three counselors. I'll go ahead and fall off.
No,
I'll log off.
Thank you. And IT, can you please mute the line or stop the broadcast so we do not break FOIA policy? Thank you.